Well, good evening to all randos. I hope we're all having an excellent evening. And yeah, I hope you're also looking forward to this as much as I am, because we're about to delve pretty deep into some Hobbit characters. I take it you can all hear me because I'm seeing comments going by in chat. How are we doing? And if you are currently imbibing an alcoholic beverage, let me know what you're drinking. I am not today. Because I'm going to be drinking rather heavily tomorrow, and I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to do it 2 days in a row. My spleen, is it my spleen? Liver, that's the one. May not be able to take too much of it. Okay, so I was going to kind of just chill for 10 minutes, which we can still do, but honestly, given the number of you in chat, just immediately in the first minute, there's over 100 of you in chat, which is insane. So, hey, everyone, there's going to be a bunch of new people. Hey, we can just get going. So, I have, are we going to just get going, or do we want to have a chat for, yeah, I don't know, 5-10 minutes? Let me know, chat. What do we want to do? Go now or later? And if we're going to start now, I have 2 questions for you guys, that I will pitch to you. Yeah, it looks like you guys want me to start. Okay. So in that case, there are a couple of different ways that we can go about this evening. I don't know exactly how long this is going to take, but it largely depends on how we go about this. The options that we have is I can read my script for each character as we go. And then I can sort of open the floor to you guys to tell me what you think, and we can collectively decide. Alternatively, I can try my best to do like an abridged version, or we can just go with no script. The reason why I'm proposing that as a question is because if I were to read all of my character notes, that would take near enough an hour. I will try to read it quicker than I did for the recording. Because, oh, that's another bit of news. I, half an hour ago, finished recording the script for the Final Autopsy. So that is good to go. Or at least it's good to get edited and then, you know, videoed. Okay, script. It sounds like you guys are saying script. Okay, that's absolutely fine. We'll go with the script, and I will try to keep us going relatively smoothly so that it doesn't take all night. No, when I say script, I don't mean the bullet points. I mean, I used the bullet points to make the script. So, for example, when we're talking about Bomber, that will probably take me about 30 seconds to tell you what there is to say about Bomber, whereas Thorin, I may just be speaking for 3 or 4 minutes. So, I'm happy to do whatever you guys want to do so that we have full context when we're actually ranking these this lovely band of characters. Not you, though. Definitely not you. Okay, if we're going to do that, we'll see how it goes, and if some of them are taking too long, then we will, we may try and speed things up. Okay, the other question that I have is, in the script, and in the Rings of Power Final Autopsy, we started with the character with the least screen time, and we slowly work up to the characters with the most screen time. I can do that, or we can start with this. I don't even know which one this is. It's either Sigrid or Tilda. I can't remember. And we go across in this randomized order, and we finish with Dwalin. So it's totally up to you guys. The reason why it might not be a good idea to go in order from least to most screen time is it means that those of you guys who are here right now may not be here for the end of the stream, depending on how long it takes. Least to most, going up in screen time. Wyland says random it up. Go down the list. Okay, no. In that case, what I will do is I will go in the order of the script. We'll go from least to most. However, I will try to get us through the less important characters as quick as we can. Okay. That is 5 minutes of talking, and I may do some more talking at the end of the stream. But until then, it's time to go. So, where is me script? Here it is. Right, let's get this done. First up on the chopping block is our favorite little evil ball of fun, Wheelie Boy. Wheelie Boy is on screen for 11 seconds, and what a glorious 11 seconds those are. We see that he is a hard worker, despite being sickly and deformed. He has this little wheelie contraption thing that allows him to do his job, indicating that he has overcome his physical shortcomings. Although he doesn't seem to actually be able to write anything legible, he is clearly trying his best, he is fully devoted to being evil, and his finger is a pen. So, where is Wheelie Boy going? And bear in mind, for Rings of Power, the highest anyone got was inoffensive. So these 3 categories I've added at the top. I'm not going to explain to you what these are, because it should hopefully become clear. I mean, you guys are all saying perfect, so I mean, well, that was inevitable. I feel like that was going to happen. That's fine. Will he be the only one up there? Who knows? Okay. Next is the Witch King of Angmar, who appears for a grand total of 50 seconds. It is marginally higher than this, as he also appears during the fight with the White Council, but to be perfectly honest, I can't tell which Nazgul is which, and I also don't care to calculate it, because there is 0 character information present within that sequence. The Witch King is a plot device rather than a character in the trilogy. He has no traits other than evil. He only serves as an extension of Sauron's will, and we can assume that everything he does is more an indicator of Sauron's character than his own. I will say as well, guys, by the way, if you disagree with anything that I say, then stick it in chat. Because in particular, when we get to the maybe more complex characters, I will be reading comments if I can. It depends on how many of them are coming in. So I think that the Witch King is absolutely a non-character. I don't know if there is any disagreement there. And no, Wyland, there is no member berry tier, but honestly, if they only exist for member berries, they're going down here. Near the bottom. Yeah, the thing is, he's not... I can't say that he's terrible because there's not enough to him for me to say terrible, so I should clarify here. I will explain this category. Non-character doesn't mean that they're the worst characters. It means that they're not characters. There isn't enough information in the films for me to tell you anything about them, so they're not applicable, essentially. Okay, up next is King Thror, Thorin's grandfather, who is on screen for 1 minute and 45 seconds. Most of what we know of Thror is second-hand, as he dies before the events of the film. We learn that he is mighty, confident, and skilled in battle. He seems to be superstitious with regard to the Arkenstone, and in his interactions with Thranduil, he is depicted as petty, although this may be as a result of dragon sickness. Where are you, King Thror? Have I lost you? Where have you gone? There you are, King Thror. I like his beard, so his beard probably puts him up a tier. What are we thinking? Do we ever hear Thror talk? No, no, we don't. We don't. We never hear him talk, as far as I'm aware. Excellent. I don't think there's enough of him to say that he's excellent, because excellent is reserved for the best of the best. Just because you have a character that is not contradictory, that I don't think is enough for them to go up in excellent. Inoffensive, mostly functional. I'm thinking that... Well, okay, put it this way. If Thror was in Rings of Power, he would be, like, among the best characters, right? So given that, I think we have to put him in inoffensive. Because the best characters in Rings of Power, I also put in this category. Yeah. I kind of agree, Samson. I don't think he is much of a character, but he does have more to him than the Witch King, for example. So yeah, I'm going to stick him in inoffensive. Okay, next up. I was going to exclude Frodo from this analysis, as he exists only as a framing device, and any characterization he has is not relevant to this story, but given that he has a full 2 minutes of screen time, I may as well throw him on the tier list to make it more complete. So Frodo exists only as a nostalgia magnet. Quite literally, everything he does has zero bearing on the plot, and if he were removed, these films would improve. So I'm kind of thinking that we change this to non-character / member berries. Oh, now we fudged it. Uh-oh. That'll have to do. Is there any argument for Frodo appearing anywhere else? You're all saying non-character. And yeah, Frodo has more screen time than Thror. So that is likely extended only. But either way, extended version is what we're having to take into account. So, Fro Diddly Donuts, where are you? Where are you? Here he is. Oh, and again, you guys tell me, because I didn't do this for the Rings of Power autopsy, but a lot of people, when they do these kinds of tier lists, the horizontal position matters. Do we want to have that argument or not, because it will take slightly longer, but it might be fun. So whether Frodo's a better character than the Witch King in The Hobbit is a bit of a silly discussion to have, but in the other categories it might make sense. 1 vote for no, 2 votes for no, 2 for yes, not for non-character. Okay. When we get to the other tiers, I will consider it. Hello, Nihilist. Glad you could join. I hope you enjoy. So, next is the Necromancer, and I do have a bit to say about him because I have to explain what he did in order to make clear what I think about him, even though he doesn't do a huge amount. So, the Necromancer, later revealed to be Sauron, appears for 2 minutes and 21 seconds. During this time, we learn very little about him, other than that he is confident, has insane plans that make no sense, is evil, and is extremely lucky. Excuse me. I've done lots of talking today, so my voice is a bit shot. We learn that approximately 400 years prior to the events of An Unexpected Journey, Sauron was defeated. He was evidently not killed, however, as the One Ring still exists, and Sauron's power is tied to it. It is unknown how long he was in Dol Guldur for, but this is where he is at the beginning of the story. We learn from various sources that Sauron's ultimate goal is to collect as many rings of power as possible and to team up with Smaug and use them as a weapon against the Free Peoples of Middle-earth, ultimately allowing him to take over the world despite him not having the One Ring. Thank you for the super chat. I will read that in one moment. He also wants to claim Erebor and use it to re-establish the Kingdom of Angmar, despite Angmar being hundreds of miles away from Erebor. Everything Sauron does in these films relies upon him having the goal of world domination. Why he wants the Rings of Power and how he is able to team up with Smaug is never explained, but must simply be accepted. There are, however, multiple instances of Sauron being seemingly extremely careless and incompetent if his goal is, in fact, to take over the world, suggesting that potentially he was being intentionally sloppy, thus allowing the heroes to play into his hands. Meaning that we find ourselves in something of a retread of the Sauron plot from Rings of Power, in that we are having to work out whether Sauron was accidentally written to be an idiot, or if his being an idiot was part of his master plan. So, in summation, Sauron allows Radagast to leave Dol Guldur in one piece and in possession of the Morgul Blade. He inexplicably keeps Gandalf alive in Dol Guldur, which results in Galadriel arriving to rescue him. He reveals his presence to the White Council, confirming to them that he is alive and a threat to Middle-earth. And he did not need to reveal himself here. The consequences for him doing all of this is that he is banished to Mordor, leading to the events of The Lord of the Rings. I don't think there is any coherent argument to say that Sauron was deliberately revealing his evil plan to everyone as part of some greater goal. The only conclusion I can draw is that Sauron in the Hobbit Trilogy is a moron. Right. Super chat from Wyland says, if X was in Rings of Power, what a low bar. Indeed, you are quite right, and we'll have to see if anyone... I can tell you that some characters are going to be better than the Rings of Power ones, but yeah, possibly not many. But yes, thank you again for the super chat. Okay, what do you guys think about the Necromancer? Because I think there's an argument for him to be in about 3 different categories. Mega Hobbit says, I want to say he's terrible because any purpose he served only showed more weaknesses than anything. He doesn't break the movies, he just tries to move the plot, but in incompetent ways. So that's why I wouldn't put him in Break the Show or Break the Films. I'm going to change that to Break the Films. So, because his plan makes a hell of a lot more sense than Halbrand's did in Rings of Power. He's either a non-character or bad. What are we thinking? We're on sort of... Let's put him in bad for now, I'm thinking. Tree Man, he's definitely not amazing. Breaks the story. He's really, really, really dumb and he's really lucky, but there isn't much in the way of personality to him. We'll put him in bad, and if other characters go in bad that are a lot better than him, then we will move him. Okay. Next up are Bard's 2 daughters, Tilda and Sigrid, who appear for 2 minutes and 45 seconds and 3 minutes respectively. Both characters are extremely passive and don't serve any kind of purpose, other than as a motivation for Bard and Bane. Tilda is adorably naive, and Sigrid is shown to protect her. So Tilda's the young one, Sigrid's the older one. Neither character has any development beyond this, and they exist as a means of contextualizing Bard's actions. Let's do... Well, I mean, I think they probably go under the same category, but mostly functional is kind of what I'm thinking. I don't think they are non-characters because they have personalities. Like Frodo and the Witch King. Okay, Frodo has a personality, but they don't do anything. So I'm thinking mostly functional, honestly, for both of these. Where's the other one? Also, when I was spooling... Here she is. Spooling through the extended, not extended, the behind-the-scenes footage in the appendices for the Hobbit movies, these two girls are, the actresses are the daughters of, where has he gone? This guy, James Nesbitt, who played Boffer. They're his daughters. And yeah, they got to be in the film, which I thought was pretty cool. Okay, mostly functional. I think we're agreed there. Okay, next up are the three trolls, Tom, Bert, and William. All three are on screen for 3 minutes and 45 seconds, and all three are extremely simple. One is slightly more intelligent than the other two, one is a Looney Tunes character, and one likes food. All three of them are idiots, however they are apparently intelligent enough to cook simple food, and to make threats so as to disarm the dwarves, and they are apparently resourceful enough to tie up all 13 dwarves and Bilbo. I don't know which troll is which, but I'm thinking they're all going in the same tier. I want to put them in bad because I don't think they're terrible, but I'm willing to hear an argument that they should be higher. Because they, in particular, the one that was just... Where is he? Where is he? Not this one, not that one, that's the Goblin Man. That's Bolg. Where are they gone? Where's the other trolls? This one, this one. This one is, I want to say, terrible. Maybe the other two are slightly better because they don't annoy me as much. Mega Hobbit says, you know what's funny? I give all three trolls good. They aren't awful and their scene has some weight. Are we going to bump them up? I don't think they're functional. I don't think they're functional. Yeah, snot humor and how dumb the dwarves are really makes that scene not function. But then this is the thing, is if the scene doesn't function and it's not the fault of the troll's characterization, then where do they actually belong? Realistic Delinquent says, I think they were plot critical and act like trolls should. Yes, they're plot... Okay. Do I hear any arguments saying that they should not be in bad as opposed to terrible? Where's the other one? There he is. I'm thinking these two might actually be an image of the same guy because he's wearing an apron in both cases. So, yeah, I think I have images of the same one. The trolls were fine. They were plot devices. The troll characters are fine. Okay, you guys obviously like the trolls more than I do. I refuse to put them any higher than mostly functional, however. I am sorry. Because, yes, they are acknowledged in the film as being idiots, and they act like idiots. So the problem isn't that they're dumb. I think the problem is more in how the film portrays the dwarves in relation to them. So we'll put them in mostly functional. You have convinced me. Okay. Next up is absolutely one of the highlights of the trilogy, Dane Ironfoot, who appears for 4 minutes. We spend less time with Dane than we do with every single character in Rings of Power, with the exception of Finrod, and Dane absolutely demolishes every single one of them. Dane is a dwarf through and through. He is ruthless, cocky, unshakable, reckless, and extremely courageous. He despises elves, possibly Thranduil in particular, and he is shown to be an excellent military strategist. He has a very direct moral compass, showing no concern as to whether or not the elves were helping him against the orcs. As with many of the minor characters in this trilogy, Dane is very simple, but he is very effective and extremely clearly defined. There are no question marks with this character. He is predictable, explicable, and serves his purpose excellently. So not to tip my hand, but where are we? Where are you, Dane? Where are you, Dane? You're not Dane, but for now, I'm just, yeah. Dane is going up here unless you guys convince me otherwise. Where is he? Here he is, Dane on his little piggy. Yeah, you guys are saying Dane is excellent or perfect. I'm very hesitant to put a character in perfect, apart from Wheelie Boy, obviously. Because I'm thinking, like, perfect would be, like, my favorite characters of all time, and I don't think that any character in The Hobbit reaches that. However, like, Dane is, like, top tier for this series. CGI aside, Dane is lucky he didn't get plenty of screen time and used each scene without contradicting himself. Yeah, is there anything that he does that... I don't think there's anything he does that's contradictory. One of the biggest plot problems that I have, really, is that his arrival comes out of nowhere and it happens far quicker than it should have. But that's not his fault. That's not the fault of the character. So, Carlos says, what if you put a pickup for each character in a size we can see him so we know who you're talking about? I can certainly try. You guys tell me, do you need that? While I read the next character, you tell me, do you need that? Because once we get to the dwarves, you might, but then at the same time, that will take me some time to do. Okay, Dane is excellent. I hear no argument against. Okay. Up next is Bard's son, Bane, who appears for 4 minutes and 15 seconds. Bane is an extremely simple character, but he does impact the plot far more than his sisters. Bane is shown to be courteous, and he is very brave and wants to protect his family, at one point even putting himself between them and a troll. However, every time the plot requires something of him, he starts to fall apart. He believes in fairy tales with no explanation as to why, and those fairy tales turn out to be correct. He also remembers and forgets things as required by the plot, and he is of course a closeted siege weapon. Okay, Bane. Where is he? I think Bane would be a sort of mid to good character in Rings of Power. He, I think, probably fits into either the bad / mostly functional tier. Mostly functional? Mostly functional is what I'm hearing. Bane is inoffensive. I think that Bane is definitely worse than, like, Thror because of the whole introduction scene in the Battle of the Five Armies. So I'm thinking we'll go with mostly functional. Lombak says, terrible, he's not a character, he's a tool. He's constantly used and puppeted by the plot. You're not wrong. However, there are multiple characters that you could say that applies to, and Bane does actually have some semblance of a personality. He has things that he wants to do, things that he doesn't want to do, and he is actually capable of balancing the two and making decisions. Those decisions are really fucking dumb, and the only reason why they happen is because the other characters let them happen, but there is a brain in that head. Okay. I think we're going to leave him there, and given that I already have these images on the screen, can I zoom us in anymore, because then it'll make it slightly bigger. Okay, we'll go with that for now. When we start getting characters all the way over here, it'll be harder to see, but that has made the characters bigger. Hopefully, you guys should know who I'm talking about. What I'll do, actually, before I read the character that I'm talking about, I'll put them up here next to Wheelie Boy so that you know who I'm talking about. Okay, so the next character is Thrain. Next up is Thorin's crazy murder hobo of a father, Thrain, who appears for 4 minutes and 30 seconds, almost all of which is in extended scenes in the desolation of Smaug. Thrain is both extremely important and extremely unimportant to the plot of this trilogy. His initial mysterious disappearance, as well as his entrusting of the map and key to Gandalf, are crucial to the narrative sequence of events. Thrain's actions allow his son to retake Erebor. However, he is also seen to be alive in Dol Guldur with seemingly no justification. He knows things he can't possibly know, he is killed for seemingly no reason, and he is entirely forgotten about after he dies. In terms of his character, he seems to have been driven mad by some combination of losing his own father, as well as his experiences in Dol Guldur. He seems terrified of Smaug and is absolutely against the idea of anyone entering Erebor, which raises the question as to why he gave Gandalf the map and key to begin with, a question that is never answered. Ultimately, however, he does love his son, and we see during the flashback scenes that he was more than willing to sacrifice his own life to save Thorin. Okay, I'm going to have a drink very quickly while I read your comments. Film guy, you say Thrain is mostly functional. That, I think, is extremely generous, but okay. I don't think he... Do you guys really think he breaks the films? Because I'm not sure he's that low. Because about 5 people here have said that he breaks the films. Present an argument, and if I see a decent one, I'll read it. But I don't think I put him that low. I think he's absolutely in terrible. I'm not sure I'd put him that low. A few of you guys are also saying mostly functional and non-character. I think that Thrain is far too complex to be a non-character. The non-characters are for the characters that don't matter. Whereas Thrain might be terrible, but he matters. He definitely matters. And just to, again, make this clear, the fact that we have absolutely no idea why he is in Dol Guldur does not put him in Breaks the Films on his own. I would put him in Breaks the Films if it was impossible for him to be in Dol Guldur. But even then, that's not character-driven. So just bear in mind that if we're putting him down here, then he's comparable to the worst characters from Rings of Power. So in my view, that was Isildur, Halbrand, and Elrond. There was too little of him to be terrible, so he's bad. Nowhere near breaks the films, not consequential enough. His stupid decision with the key... well, yeah, you either mean him talking to Gandalf about it, which I don't think is his fault, because he's crazy at that point. But him giving it to Gandalf maybe makes sense, but maybe telling him, you gotta, like, destroy it. It looks like most of you seem to be saying terrible. I think he's bad. He's terrible or bad. Not as bad as characters from Rings of Power. Okay. In that case, no, sorry, I've got to make a decision here. I am going to put him in terrible, and if he could get bumped up by other characters appearing in terrible, we will have to see. I don't think he goes any higher than that. Okay, next character is Captain Nutsack. This is the Great Goblin, of course. So, the Great Goblin appears for 5 minutes and 30 seconds. The Great Goblin is the film's first experimentation with the childishly exaggerated pantomime clown archetype that it would double and triple down on later in the trilogy. The Great Goblin likes to sing, kills other goblins for no reason whatsoever, tells Thorin things he has absolutely no reason to tell him, initially wants to torture the dwarves for information for no obvious reason, beyond him being sadistic, but then upon seeing that Thorin was carrying Orcrist the Goblin Cleaver, decides to kill them for some reason. He then orders that Thorin be decapitated so he can claim his reward, which makes an amount of sense, although the fact that he didn't do this immediately does not. Ultimately, he dies because he is inexplicably able to teleport in front of everyone as they escape the caves, and because he decided to challenge Gandalf to mortal combat, despite being an extremely incapable fighter himself, and despite knowing Gandalf to be a wizard, capable of taking down hundreds of goblins without even trying. So we have some trolls in here. Well, I'm not going to say trolls. I love you guys, even though I know you're trolling. The Great Goblin is not S. Breaks the film with his girth. Definitely bad. Terrible. We've got a few terribles. We've got a couple of perfects. Pretty delicious. Perfectly delicious. I feel like I need to add that category, but nope, I can't. He's a Chad, put him in excellent. The songs break the film as I couldn't take anything seriously after that point and thought all the movies were terrible. That's fair enough. His whole bit is a joke. Yeah, you're not wrong, but there's a way to do, you know, a joke of a character without having him be impossibly dumb. And again, the whole teleporting thing and attacking Gandalf at the end is just really, 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 really stupid. So I personally would put him in terrible. I'm willing to hear an argument that bumps him up to bad. Do you guys, I don't know, is the general consensus that the Goblin King is one of the worst parts of the films? Because, like, that was always my view, but I don't know if that's the view that everyone has. Nothing better than terrible. He should have been more serious. Terrible, terrible, easily terrible. Okay, right, he's in terrible. And what we'll do, I think for simplicity, is we'll just throw people in categories and maybe reorder them at the end. Okay, next character is Beorn. Okay, Beorn appears for 6 minutes and 15 seconds. Beorn does have a good amount of characterization in a relatively short amount of time, much of which is only present in the extended cut. Beorn is a shape changer and is established as being a very threatening and unpredictable person who can occasionally be reasoned with. We learn that he is the last of his kind. We see that he lives with his animals and stockpiles food, indicating that he is both practical and reclusive. We learn that he does not like dwarves, due to their perceived lack of concern for creatures they deem lesser than themselves, indicating that Beorn, like Radagast, likes to take care of and protect the other creatures of Middle-earth. Ultimately, however, he decides to help Thorin, his claimed reason being that he hates orcs more than he hates dwarves, and he loans them 13 ponies. The biggest problem with Beorn is not in his characterization. It is in the way the film undermines his characterization in the name of comedy. Because of this, Beorn seems to be more contradictory than he may in fact be, as the film suggests that he is simultaneously twitchy, violent, and dangerous, with a particular dislike of dwarves, but also that he is very kind, generous, and compassionate. If Gandalf's descriptions of Beorn that serve as the setup to a bad joke were removed from the film, Beorn would likely go up a tier as a result. What do we have to say about Beorn? I see lots of inoffensives. I'm inclined to agree, because I would say I want him to be good. I think he is one of the better characters in the series. Evening, Ryan. Hey, hey, hey. I think he's definitely one of the better characters in the series. However, the way he is introduced, I think, knocks him down to inoffensive. And it looks like all of you guys seem to be agreeing inoffensive on this character. I think he's better than Thror. We'll put him at the top end of inoffensive. And I think this probably goes without saying. If he was in Rings of Power, he'd be the best character. Okay, next character is Saruman. And bear in mind that when we are ranking Saruman on this tier list, we are taking his appearance in The Hobbit. I do not care how good he is in The Lord of the Rings. Okay. Up next is Saruman, who appears for 6 minutes and 15 seconds. Saruman is somewhat difficult to dissect because, as with Sauron, there are two ways of looking at him. Either he has already been corrupted by Sauron, and so everything he does is a facade, or he is earnestly working with the White Council to defeat Sauron, only to then become corrupted after the events of the trilogy. Most of this ambiguity is only possible due to the fact that Galadriel, Elrond, and Gandalf fail to ask him to explain himself on multiple occasions, and so Saruman, as depicted in this trilogy, is both confusing and extremely thin in terms of characterization. Saruman doesn't approve of Gandalf meddling in mortal affairs and considers his worrying about Sauron's return to be bordering on paranoia. Additionally, we learn that Saruman highly values power, and we see that he is himself extremely powerful and very confident in his abilities. Something I am going to edit in when I do the video is I found a behind-the-scenes clip of Peter Jackson talking with Christopher Lee about the character of Saruman in The Hobbit, and I know that we're not taking into account, because Death of the Author is a relatively good standard, but we're not taking into account what they say, but I find it very interesting that both Peter Jackson and Christopher Lee were of the impression that Christopher Lee was, through and through, he was a good guy during The Hobbit. So the suggestion that he was actually evil seems to have been born of people being unable to understand, or, well, that puts the onus on them. It seems to have been born of the writer's inability to accurately convey what was going on. So his actions don't really make much sense unless he's evil. And so you have to assume that he's probably evil, but yeah. Okay, what do we think? I've got to scroll up because there's nearly 250 of you in chat, which is ridiculous. So hello again to everyone who I have not said hello to before. And I hope you enjoy the stream. So where are we? You guys are saying good or mostly functional. He's almost a non-character, mostly functional, inoffensive. Member berries, evil or dumb, inoffensive. This is the thing, is I have to separate Christopher Lee from Saruman because I fucking love Christopher Lee. And honestly, I fucking love Christopher Lee as Saruman. But very little of what he does really makes any sense. Bad or terrible? I'm leaning towards bad. But he's not that impactful, so him being bad doesn't... He's not that out of line with the way that he is in The Lord of the Rings. Partly because a lot of his actions make more sense if he's evil, but yeah. God tier acting, bad writing, mostly functional. I feel like that applies to a lot of this. Like Thorin in particular. His acting is incredible, and I love the actor, but I try as I might, I can't love the character. I am sorry. Okay, next character is... Who is the next character? Oh, here we go. Where have you gone? The Master of Lake Town, Evil McGee. Okay. The Master of Lake Town, or Evil McGee, as he is referred to in my videos, appears for 6 minutes and 30 seconds. The Master's characterization is definitely one of the weakest parts of this trilogy, as he is incredibly irritating and fundamentally unbelievable. There is very little to him, but what little there is seems to be reinforced with every single line he delivers. So the problem is not so much that he is inconsistent or contradictory, it is more so that he is aggressively one-note and simplistic. So what do we know about the Master of Lake Town? He trades with Thranduil and he is very wealthy. He rules over Lake Town as a dictator, making up laws so as to imprison people he doesn't like, and he is entirely motivated by his desire to accumulate wealth. The Master is used on 3 separate occasions to drive the plot. He imprisons Bard, he agrees to release Thorin, and he pushes Alfred overboard with the intention of leaving him to die. All 3 of these actions are singularly justified by his goal of acquiring lots of money. He is incredibly greedy and paranoid, is as self-serving and selfish as is humanly possible, is tremendously incompetent as a leader, is a hypocrite, and inexplicably believes himself to be both intelligent and physically attractive. This character is, simply put, a bad joke that goes on for 6 minutes and 30 seconds longer than it needed to, and the existence of a character as outrageous as this within Middle-earth is something I cannot accept. What do you guys think about the Master of Lake Town? Because, no, Sebastian Melton, we are not putting him in perfect. I'll tell you what I think, and I'll see if there is any disagreement. I don't think he breaks the films because he is not contradictory. He's similar to Galadriel in Rings of Power. She is consistently a terrible person, as is the Master of Lake Town. So I can't say that he breaks the films. I don't know if there is any argument that he is any higher than terrible, though, because of the way that he is depicted and the way that he's portrayed. And again, in the behind-the-scenes footage, I fucking found this was with regard to Alfred, not the Master, but I'll tell you anyway. I found a clip of Peter Jackson and Ryan Gage, the actor who played Alfred, basically discussing how Alfred should not be a cartoon character, and I am very much looking forward to abusing that clip when I put the video together. I think we need a tier under terrible. The problem with doing that is it then means that we're saying that the Master is worse than Galadriel in Rings of Power, and I don't think that he is. The Honored One says he rubs his hands together after burning down an orphanage and then twirls his mustache. You pretty much banged the nail on the head. He's just evil man who's evil. Children's cartoon tier bad guy terrible. Yeah, you're absolutely correct. He's going in terrible. I will hear no argument to the contrary. Okay. Next character is where's he gone? Bolg is next. Okay. Bolg appears for 8 minutes and 30 seconds. Bolg has nearly 3 times as much screen time as Lurtz in The Lord of the Rings, and very little is done with that extra screen time. We don't really know much about Bolg other than that he is an evil henchman. We know he listens to Azog, possibly due to him being the spawn of Azog, and he is built like a brick shithouse. He is narrowly beaten in a fight by Legolas, suggesting that he would win a 1v1 against any non-wizard in Middle-earth, virtually any non-wizard in Middle-earth. And the only moment of anything approaching nuance to his character is the revelation that he is willing to lie to Azog in order to cover up his own failure. I really don't know where I want to put Bolg. Most of you guys are saying bad to mostly functional. He's definitely not higher than inoffensive, but I also don't think he's terrible. He's in one of the 3 middling categories. Really boring, Mr. Mumps, you're not wrong. Do we... No, I'll wait to ask that question for when we do Azog. Bad, inoffensive, non-character... Again, he's not a non-character because there's definitely more to him than these two. Mostly functional, inoffensive, bad. I say inoffensive. Good, there's no contradictions. That is a good point. Dragon Knight, fucking hell, I can't be putting Bolg in good. I'm sorry. I take your point. Bolg is not contradictory. He's just extremely simple, which means the highest I think he's going to go is inoffensive. Because, yeah, he's a mini-boss that is given a hell of a lot of screen time. And, well, I say a hell of a lot. It's 8 minutes or whatever, but it's a lot more than he maybe should have got. So... he's functional as a character. Let's go with, I think, mostly functional. I've got to make a decision. We're going to say mostly functional. Okay, next is Galadriel. And as with Saruman, remember we are grading her in The Hobbit, not in The Lord of the Rings. Okay, next up is Galadriel, who appears for 9 minutes and 15 seconds. Galadriel is shown to have a very close relationship with Gandalf, and she maintains her aura of ethereality and otherworldliness that was so effective in her depiction in The Lord of the Rings. Galadriel seems endeared by Gandalf's playful cheekiness, and she also places a high degree of trust in his judgment. She is generally treated like a god, seemingly being able to evaporate, can predict the future to some degree, is able to vaporize things with her mind. Somewhat confusingly, she does not defend herself against Saruman's implication that she doesn't know what she's talking about when he claims there to be no proof that the Witch King's Morgul blade came from his grave, and he does this immediately after Galadriel claimed that the blade came from his grave. Overall, her depiction in The Hobbit is not out of line with her depiction in The Lord of the Rings. However, she does suffer from the consequences of the subplot in which she appears, in that she is required to be extremely naive and careless by not taking any further action prior to the events of The Lord of the Rings. Okay, super chat from Mr. Happy Nihilist. I think Dane and more so Sauron are too high up. Well, okay, I am going to put Dane up there because personally that's what I think. You could convince me good, but we'll do a bit of a rejig when we get to the end of the list. Sauron, again, Sauron I think is either bad or terrible, so I don't think I disagree with you, but I'm trying to go with maybe what the majority think. But either way, thank you for the super chat, and we'll see if we can rejig these characters as needed when we get to the end. Okay, you guys say, this is for Galadriel, mostly functional, inoffensive, mostly functional. Terrible. Sliz says terrible. I would need to hear an argument on that. If she can vaporize things, why didn't she do that in Lord of the Rings? The argument I would have to that is that she's never in a position where she can do that, but yeah, then you're starting to make an argument as to, why wasn't she on the front lines against Sauron, which is not a question you need to ask when you're watching The Lord of the Rings, but with The Hobbit, it's a question you need to ask. Inoffensive, her scene with Gandalf is S tier. I agree with that. I love that scene. Whether I did when I did the video, I don't know, but on rewatch, I do like that scene a lot. HP says, I think she's bad, mostly functional, inoffensive. Okay, I am going to decide. I would have put her in inoffensive. I don't think that she's good, but yeah, I think we're going to we'll put her there in inoffensive. And again, we will do a bit of a rejig when we get further into the tier list. So, next character. Where has he gone? Elrond. Elrond appears for 10 minutes. Elrond, like Galadriel, is virtually untarnished by the events of the trilogy, but is similarly damaged by the implications of what he did or did not do in between the two trilogies. Elrond is established to be a bit of a dick in that he speaks to the dwarves in a language they cannot understand, presumably because he finds it funny to wind them up a bit. He is, however, very polite when dealing with Thorin, who clearly does not like him. He is welcoming and generous, is more than willing to help, and seems to be very wise. He is also reasonably cautious as he voices concern to Gandalf about the consequences of releasing Smaug, and with regard to Thorin being crazy. I will tell you what I think, and then I will look at chat. So I think he comfortably fits into good. I don't think he's higher because, again, the consequences of the plot that he appears in means that he's kind of a dum-dum for not doing anything after the fact. But yeah, let's see what chat says. Good, mostly good, good, inoffensive, good. Yeah, I'm thinking we've got our first good, which means the only tier that we don't have yet is Breaks the Films, and whether anyone will, we will have to see. Film Guy says, despite his one-liner at Dol Guldur, can anyone, well, some of you definitely can remember it, but you should have stayed dead. Yeah. I wonder how many takes they had to do for that, because I do love it when you have actors like, honestly, like all three of them, just reading like Marvel tier lines. Okay. Right, next character. We have 4 more characters, and then we're out of who I consider to be the minor characters. And then at that point, we can maybe have a rejig, or I can just keep going. So, who is after Elrond? It is Radagast. Okay, Radagast appears for 10 minutes and 30 seconds, and in that time we learn that he loves animals, but is mostly useless. He appears capable of rudimentary magic in the form of healing, he has rabbits that can run fast, and it is implied that he is addicted to the magic of mushrooms. He is also extremely unhygienic, having literal bird shit on his face, and we have conflicting information as to how effective he is in a fight. Radagast is shown to be very pragmatic, prioritizing the overall safety of Middle-earth over any one life, or specifically any 14 lives. and he successfully convinces Gandalf to do the same. The main issue with Radagast is that of tonal inconsistency. His character design and his personality quirks are very comical and exaggerated, making him seem not to fit within the world in which he has been placed. However, there isn't anything majorly wrong with him in terms of his construction within the narrative. Okay. What are we saying, chat? What are we saying? We're saying bad, terrible, inoffensive. Bad, bad, mostly functional. So, as I said, my view of Radagast, I was very harsh on him in my videos because he pisses me off. In terms of what he actually does, I don't think he's particularly bad. It's the way that the design of the character and the way the actor decided to play the character is primarily what I take issue with. Breaks the films. Why are we saying he breaks the films? I really don't think he does. And yeah, Dragon Knight, I completely agree. So just because I don't like him doesn't mean he isn't functional. So I don't think that Radagast is actually bad. Zach says, I think terrible, same as the Goblin King. I can't take the movie seriously with him on screen. That is true. However, Radagast's actions in the films are nowhere near as baffling as the Goblin King. Like, what really, really dumb things does Radagast do? Because there are things that Radagast does that, in terms of how he sort of generally behaves and conducts himself, that I could be like, come on, man, what are you doing? I don't believe that this character is real. And there are other times when he teleports, and had he not done so, everyone would have died. But that's not his character. That's his implementation. HP says, I say he's terrible because if they cut every scene he was in, the film would be markedly better. Well, there are many characters that applies to. Look no further than the various fan edits that cut out half of these characters. Radagast seems to act logically, sees evil black goo, reacts appropriately. I'm thinking I'm going to say mostly functional. Because if the design of the character, yeah, Adam, your point, you're right, it's the design of the character. So if this was played by, let's say, that same character, that same actor, but he didn't have bird shit all over him and he didn't do a silly face while he smokes the pipe weed, then this would be far less of a conversation. It would be like, right, he's mostly functional, moving on. Okay. And yes, Melanistic Yemen. So the scene with the hedgehog was a huge waste of time. There is a lot of wasted time with Radagast, but there's a massive amount of wasted time with Legolas. But I mean, wait until we get to Legolas to see what I think of him. So we're going to stick Radagast in mostly functional. Okay, next up, you have all been waiting for this, is Alfred. Also known as the infamous Greaseberg McMonobrow, he has more screen time than Eomer, Denethor, or Wormtongue in The Lord of the Rings. As with the Master of Lake Town, Alfred is far and away one of the worst parts of this trilogy. I won't spend too much time on him here as I gave a pretty in-depth conclusion on him in Part 3, but I will summarize. Alfred is as one-dimensional as they come. He exists to be laughed at, but he is apocalyptically unfunny. He is kept alive after the opening of the Battle of the Five Armies, seemingly purely to provide some comic relief and to serve as a foil to Bard during the Dale scenes. However, neither of these things were necessary in the overall narrative, and very likely came about as a result of the decision to split the story into 3 movies. The character does not serve any kind of mechanical purpose, and could be deleted from the film entirely without anything of value being lost. Alfred doesn't act like a person. He doesn't have any awareness of the fact that other people are capable of cognition, and are therefore very aware that he is lying, gaslighting, and pretending to be something he is not. Alfred is easily one of the most absurd additions to the Hobbit Trilogy, although he is only on screen, and although he is only on screen for 11 minutes, those are 11 minutes too many. Okay, there were a lot of comments going by, so I need to scroll up. Bear with me. He wasted our time. Terrible, terrible. Perfect character. Breaks the film. I don't think he breaks the film for the same reason as the Master. He's not contradictory. He's just as simple as you can possibly get. Terrible, terrible. Wormtongue wannabe. Wyland, again, I'm sorry. I don't think I can put him in breaks the film. Terrible. Yeah, you're basically all saying terrible, unless you're memeing. So he's terrible. I think he's worse than the Master, mainly because he gets so much more screen time. Okay. Next up, where is he? Gollum is a character that the films could easily have fumbled, but thankfully he remains entirely consistent with his depiction in The Lord of the Rings. Gollum appears for 11 minutes and 30 seconds, and he is characterized as deranged and violent, having split personalities, one hostile and one less so, although there are hints that these personalities are not quite as distinct as they may initially seem. He is very excited to play games with Bilbo, as he is likely the first non-goblin he has interacted with in an extremely long time. I previously claimed that Gollum was shown to be honourable, as although he armed himself with a rock, he did not cheat in the game of riddles. However, upon being informed that he had lost, he reaches for the ring, only to discover that it was not in his pocket. This presumably means that his intention was to turn invisible, ambush Bilbo, and then kill him and eat him, despite the fact that he had promised to lead him out of the cave. He also seemed incredulous that Bilbo had breached his trust and stolen from him. His reaction seems to be more than a simple panic upon losing his precious. His reaction also indicates shock, rage, amazement, and pure seething hatred. Okay, so Gollum in The Lord of the Rings stays right the fuck where he is. He's perfect. So is there any argument to be made that Gollum in his single scene in I was about to say Rings of Power, in The Hobbit, does not deserve to be in that tier? Because you guys are all saying perfect, and I don't have a problem with that. I think when I sort of prevised this tier list, I had him in excellent, but that's because I didn't have anyone in perfect. Yeah, you guys are all saying perfect or excellent. So Mega Hobbit says Gollum is perfect. His scene was the highlight of the first movie, and of course is still unchanged from before Frodo. Like this is him before Frodo. Yeah, completely agree with that. Gollum, Colonel Falcar says, Gollum had no change in The Hobbit. Andy Serkis just reprised his role exactly. Yeah, essentially that. And again, something just interesting factoid that I found when peeling through the appendices of The Hobbit films. The scene between Andy Serkis and Martin Freeman, where they do that scene, was the first scene that was filmed for the entire trilogy. Which means, yeah, that the first scene that was filmed, I think Andy Serkis said something along the lines of he felt sorry for Martin Freeman, because Martin Freeman hadn't had really much chance to develop the character of Bilbo at that point. So he was having to deal with the fact that he had to get his own internalized version of Bilbo right, and he also had to deal with Andy Serkis running around pretending to be Gollum. So, yeah, I found that quite amusing. Nosferatu, so do you think it would be worthwhile to use the animated adaptation of The Hobbit as a reference in your critique of this trilogy? Very slight spoiler alert. I have watched it. I do like it. I think it is better than the Peter Jackson trilogy. I don't think it's perfect, and I do briefly touch upon it in the Final Autopsy that I have now recorded. Because holy shit, we're at 315 people watching live, which is definitely a record. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in, and I hope you are enjoying the stream. Yeah, so those of you who missed the beginning of the stream, I have finished recording the Final Autopsy. Tristan G, so it was with Del Toro that it was filmed? No, so Del Toro left the project before any cameras were switched on, unfortunately, which I don't actually go into that in the Final Autopsy because it's not particularly relevant to my analysis, but you can get all of that in the appendices of the Hobbit trilogy, which are about as in-depth as the ones for The Lord of the Rings. So the difference is obviously in the quality of the finished product. Right. Next character. This is the final character in terms of secondary... in terms of tertiary characters. Then we move on to the secondary characters, and what I think I will do, I have an idea when we get to them. So, the final tertiary character is Azog. Okay. Azog the Defiler appears on screen for 13 minutes. In that time, we don't learn a huge amount about him. However, he is by no means anything approaching the worst character in this trilogy. Azog is depicted as having one single driving motivation: to destroy the line of Durin. He agrees to work with Sauron provided Sauron facilitates Thorin's death. He personally kills Thror, Fili, and eventually Thorin, although for some reason he allows Thrain to live during the Battle of Moria, for reasons that can only be inferred. Azog is very pragmatic and strategic, however he is ultimately obedient and will not defy Sauron's orders. His overconfidence leads to his demise, although not before he deals a killing blow to Thorin. Azog is an extremely simple character, however he serves a very clear purpose in the story, and he is used very deliberately, which contrasts with how the writers used similarly simplistic characters such as Alfred. He is a mostly effective antagonist that serves as a constant source of tension in an unexpected journey, but he is then mostly forgotten about until his showdown in the Battle of the Five Armies. So my guess here is that I have a better view of Azog than most of you guys, because he's generally brought up as one of the worst things about the movies. I don't think that's the case at all. Right, scrolling up, what did you guys say? Azog is bad, mostly functional, bad, inoffensive, good, bad, mostly functional. I think he's sort of mid-tier is what I'm thinking. He also teleports at the start of the second movie. Yeah, you're not wrong. But again, I'm trying to omit that because that's not his character. That's how he's used. Melanistic Yemen. Why does he want to wipe out the line of Durin? That's a good question. Moving on. So, mostly functional. Azog is fine, mid. He's definitely mid. Inoffensive, mostly fun. I don't think he's inoffensive because I think there are problems with him. The fact that he monologues and just tells people, he just says exactly what he's thinking at all times. I think he's going in mostly functional. I don't think he's going any higher than that. Okay. We now come to the secondary characters. So what I'm going to do, because that took us nearly an hour, my guess is it'll probably take about an hour to do the secondary characters, because based on the amount of words for each, it's pretty much split into three. We've got about a third of it is secondary characters, a third is tertiary characters, and third of it is primary. So what we're going to do, if you guys want me to, is I can put up a poll in the YouTube chat, and you guys can rate the characters as you see fit, but also obviously feel free to use the chat box because I can read it. The problem with doing that is that there are not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are not 9 tiers that I can put in the YouTube poll. There are only, I think, 5. So, yes, Nihilist says yes. Do I put a poll up to decide if we're gonna have a poll? Okay, right, I've put a poll up to decide if we're going to have a poll. So if you want me to put up a poll for each character from here on, it won't really take me a huge amount of extra time to do. The question is, do you want me to do that? Are you going to be taking part? Right, let me have another swig of my water because I'm feeling boring tonight. Right, yeah, I'm just going to end the poll right there. That's 85% of you that want me to do polls. Okay. Righty then. So I will give you guys a chance to think, and then I will read you my notes. The next character is Thranduil. Thranduil. So the tiers that we're going to use for the poll. I think it will be too much to do a multi-stage poll. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to poll it whether they're like good, bad, or not. And then we'll discuss after the fact. So excellent / good, inoffensive / mostly functional, bad / terrible, what have we done here? I need to split the categories in a way that makes sense. Just give me 30 seconds or so. So if we go, basically no character is going to be excellent, so let's do this instead. Saying that, Thranduil might end up being excellent, so we'll have to see. Oh, fucking hell. Okay, I can only have 3 categories, or 4 categories. Okay, so the categories that we're going to use is good, which would also include excellent, inoffensive, mostly functional, and bad / terrible. So if you think that the character is any lower than terrible, so if you think they break the films or they're a non-character, that's going to need to be a comment. And if you think they're perfect, that's also going to need to be a comment. So Poll is starting. Do feel free to change your answer as and when I read something that you agree with or not. So, Thranduil is a very interesting character who could have been even more interesting if these films were better than they ended up being. He appears for 17 minutes and is one of very few characters in the trilogy that I am comfortable describing as complex. Thranduil's past is mostly a mystery. We only learn that his wife was killed, and it is implied that he risked his life to try and save her. His core motivation of the film is extremely frustrating, because it had the potential to be excellent, but parts of it were inexplicably cut. The dwarves of Erebor were hired to make a necklace for Thranduil's wife, but she died before the necklace could be completed. Thranduil then attempted to get the gems back from the dwarves to keep in her memory, but Thror refused to give them to him. Inexplicably, none of this is in the film. All we know from the film is that he really, really wants these gems, and it is up to the audience to fill in the blanks. The additional idea that the gems were intended for his dead wife was entirely fabricated by the writers of the films, and yet they didn't commit and actually include this in the movies. There is something to be said for brevity, and if the Hobbit Trilogy was tighter than a nun's chocolate speedway, then I could be convinced that explaining Thranduil's motivation is not crucial to the story of Thorin retaking Erebor. However, in a film series filled to the brim with unnecessary levels of horse shit, that is not an argument one can make. There is no justification for failing to explain this clearly. Anyway, Thranduil is depicted as jealous, petty, and lacking in honor. He is extremely selfish, does not seem to care about the world beyond his borders, and has become cynical as a result of his past. Unlike the Master and Alfred, we understand why Thranduil is the way he is. He is not simply evil for the sake of being evil. He appears to hold grudges, however he does offer to release Thorin, provided Thorin return the gems to him, a deal which is entirely fair and reasonable, suggesting that he actually has no real interest in being combative with the dwarves. He simply wants his gems. Thranduil is also shown to be proud, highly valuing social status, and we learn that he is a very controlling father. He is distrustful of Gandalf, is generally suspicious of those he doesn't know, and is not easy to fool. On the more positive side of things, Thranduil is very generous with his allies, indicating that he is apt at maintaining diplomatic relations. He highly values loyalty, he is thoroughly pragmatic, and is an extremely skilled warrior. Thranduil is, however, implied to be a poor military strategist. He clearly values the lives of his soldiers to an immense degree, and it is implied that rather being born of a dislike of any of the other races, this is due to the fact that elves are immortal, and therefore their deaths are that much more tragic. It is also implied by Bilbo in the prologue that the reason he did not help the dwarves was because he was unwilling to risk the lives of his soldiers against Smaug, which is very different to if he was refusing to help solely because the dwarves were mean to him. However, some of the actions taken by his soldiers during the battle are simply incongruent with this core belief, meaning that in order to have cool action, the writers damaged one of their best characters. Thranduil is also one of the few characters in the trilogy to have an arc, albeit a rather simplistic one. Throughout the third film, he becomes distanced from Legolas and ends up accepting that he can no longer control Legolas's life. He also appears to accept that Tauriel and Keely's love was real, when he had previously viewed it as something akin to an ill-advised fling. This is informed by his own history with his own wife, and ultimately Thranduil acknowledges that he was wrong. Unfortunately, we never get any closure for Thranduil. It is unknown if he ever received the gems from Dane, and his story concludes on an open-ended question. Okay. Looking at the poll, 52% of you guys are saying good or excellent. It's interesting that so many of you guys think he's worse than that. Because my gut instinct is that he's up here, because the fact that he is a poor military strategist isn't necessarily a character. It's not like a fault, a flaw, or a contradiction or anything. So let me see what the comments say. Lombax says, on the poll, put perfect, good, mostly functional, terrible, and non-character. As if people mainly choose perfect and good, the answer won't be excellent. That's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point, actually. So what I'll do is, for the characters that we're doing the tier list on, I'll split, because it's unlikely that a character I think is terrible is going to have many of you guys saying he's perfect. So I'll change the options based on what the character we're doing is. Okay, Thranduil is a bit complicated. Damn right, Zach, he is a little bit complicated. Cloud Vapor T says Thranduil could step on my face and I would thank him. Robin Moore says he's excellent, but his complication isn't developed enough. You are not wrong. I wish there was more of him, which I think he's one of the only characters that I can say that about. Melanistic Yemen says, I feel like perfect. He breaks the film and a non-character would be obvious, so no need for the poll. Oh, sorry, perfect breaks the film and non-character would be obvious, so no need for the poll. Yeah, I think I've worked out what I'm going to do with the poll. That's fine. Bleaters says, should I assume the tactics used by the elves in the battle are Thranduil's? I think we have to assume that they did what he said, because he's their commander. But again, I'm not certain how much that damages him. This guy is rather complex, too complex for the movie's writing. That's possible. He benefits the movie aesthetically. Yep. He's okay, underdeveloped. So, given the poll and given the comments, you guys seem to be leaning towards good as opposed to excellent. So, is he better than Dane? That's the question. Let's leave him in good for now, although personally I think he probably belongs in excellent. So we will leave him there for now, but there are too many of you guys that are saying, like, more than half of you think he should be lower than good. So I'm going to leave him in good. Why was the gem backstory cut out? I have no idea. I have watched all of the behind-the-scenes footage, all of, like, 40 hours of it. There is no answer. I don't know. Okay. End poll. Right. The next character, I'm going to make the poll, and then I will show you who he is. Put him above Elrond. Yeah, you're right. Let's do that. Okay. Right. Polly poll. This one, I think, is going to be all over the place. Bear with me. See, if I had thought further ahead, I would have used like an external website to do the polls, which, yeah, I'm not sure if that would be more effort than it's worth, but I could do that. I think hopefully this will work well enough. Okay. The next character is Legolas. Legolas is a character that definitely did not need to be in these films, but the more important question is, what did the writers actually do with him in his 17 minutes and 30 seconds of screen time? Rather surprisingly, Legolas does have a pretty clear character arc that fits with his depiction in The Lord of the Rings relatively well. When we first meet him, he is extremely hostile towards dwarves, very likely as a result of having Thranduil for a father. He is shown to be very jealous of Keely and seems frustrated by Tauriel's sudden romantic interest in Keely. He is extremely skilled in combat, although much of his prowess is dialed up past the point of absurdity, meaning that meaning that when once he was a highly trained superhuman multi-millennia-year-old warrior, he is now a gravity-defying weightless magic man who surfs on everything. Legolas appears to be highly motivated to purge the world of evil, as this is how Tauriel convinces him to come with her to Lake Town. He initially becomes involved in the plot because he appears to be trying to court Tauriel, despite her showing no romantic attraction towards him. Upon arriving in Lake Town, he is shown to care more about fighting orcs than protecting Bard's family, or the badly wounded Keely. We later see that he cares more about staying with Tauriel, even if platonically, than obeying his father, potentially indicating that he has a great deal of respect for her, even if she is actively pursuing Keely. By the end of the trilogy, Legolas has seemingly learned that Thranduil's passive, isolationist nature is not going to help in the ongoing fight against evil, and he decides not to return home. The problems with Legolas are that he, along with Tauriel, suffer from main character syndrome, in that they are inexplicably and exponentially more skilled than the other elves, without justification. Additionally, Legolas's relationship with Bolg is thoroughly confusing. Legolas was aware of who Bolg was prior to fighting him, and his behavior seems to indicate that he wants Bolg dead at all costs, which would be in line with his desire to kill everything that's evil. However, Legolas for some reason stopped chasing Bolg, only to then start chasing him again. No explanation is ever given as to why he did this. My guess is that the writers wanted to leave this thread open as an additional cliffhanger at the end of the Desolation of Smaug, but they also wanted him to team back up with Tauriel so they could go on an adventure. Additionally, Legolas was willing to return to his father after the messenger summoned him, but changed his mind after hearing that Tauriel had been banished. Had Tauriel not been banished, they both would have returned to the Woodland Realm instead of riding to Gundabad, which means that Legolas was not single-mindedly driven by a desire to kill Bolg, as he was initially willing to obey Thranduil. Ultimately, Legolas is absolutely an unnecessary character in this story, but at the very least, he is relatively inoffensive in terms of his characterization. Most of the problems with Legolas are not with his decision-making or his character arc, they are with how the film depicts his combat skills. Okay, Paul. You guys don't like Legolas. We're at 39% bad or terrible. I might have to remake the poll. So Jack Steele, was there a cut story that Bolg killed Legolas's mother? If that was the case early on, that is not the case in any of the behind-the-scenes footage I saw. Let me scroll up, though. What are we saying? Legolas is awful. The bloody love story, yes. Fan service gone wrong. I'm not sure he does anything that improves the film. His writing is decent enough, but his action scenes were worse. Lord Wahoo, I agree with that. I don't think there's a huge amount of problems with who he is, but again, it's what the films make him do. The fact that he does all the ridiculous surfing on people's heads and climbing up anti-gravity stairs, that doesn't tell you anything about him as a character. So even though that is all ridiculous, and hating that is completely valid, I think that needs to be separated from who he is as a person for the purposes of the tier list. Fire Klinger, the first person is Wheelie Boy. Mostly functional. Legolas Super Mario. Okay, so you guys are saying bad/terrible mostly, but then a lot of you are saying mostly functional. I don't think he's bad, so I am going to put him in mostly functional because a good chunk of you also think he's better than mostly functional. So as for the purpose he serves in the film with regard to the love triangle and the silly action scenes, he's down here. As a character, I think he's mostly functional. And that is something that may be tweaked later on. Okay, the next character is a spicy one. Let me remake the poll. Okay, the next character is Tariel. Finally, with regard to the trio of elves, Tariel appears for a total of 19 minutes and 30 seconds, which is comparable to the amount of time we spent with Faramir in The Lord of the Rings. Tariel exists within these films entirely to partake in a love triangle. She does not do anything else. She is simply Elf Lady, which is why I decided to give her the nickname Ladyless. We see early on that she distrusts dwarves, but she very quickly comes round to the idea of choking on Keely's custard launcher. We learn that she is of a lower social standing than Legolas, but that she is a captain in Thranduil's guard. Like Legolas, she is unbelievably skilled in combat, but is tragically impaired when it comes to constructing sentences that are not cringeworthy, possibly due to the fact that she is an entirely original creation of the writers. She is shown to be willing to manipulate Legolas in order to try and save Keely, believing that he would follow her to Lake Town like a lovesick puppy, despite her seeming to have no romantic interest in him, and ultimately she is only able to save Keely because Boffa went and found some Kingsfoil. Tariel is established as caring about children, but she also allows children to run into what should be certain death. She is unfathomably and impossibly naive and inexperienced with Middle-earth, despite being an elf who is hundreds, if not thousands of years old. She is unfamiliar with Gundabad and the Kingdom of Angmar, despite them being located in the grand scheme of things extremely close to where she lives. She is also seemingly entirely unfamiliar with the concepts of love and death. Overall, Tariel is a colossal waste of time, and I find it thoroughly amusing that the reason she exists at all is because of the lack of female characters in the source material, and yet her singular purpose is to be one axis of an extremely forced and unconvincing love triangle. Okay. What does the poll say? Most of you guys are going for bad. It's interesting that you haven't gone for terrible. A good chunk of you say breaks the film's non-character. I don't think I agree with that. What I'm going to do, actually, here, just bear with me for a minute, and I'm going to make the chat screen bigger on the stream, because I realize the poll is taking up a whole load of space. Give me a secondo. That's a bit better. Now we can turn off the background as well, actually, that works. Okay, cool. Right. Non-character, Keely's Willy, yep. She's not great, but don't be mean to the poor girl. I like Bleeter says, I like how there's no good option in the poll. Yeah. I enjoyed the part where she saved Legolas from an orc by shooting its arrow out of the air with her arrow instead of shooting the orc. Yeah, that's a somewhat questionable decision. Okay. And we've got terrible, little to no impact on the story. She's just bad or terrible. I feel bad for the actress. She was great. So I don't mind the actress, but I am not sure I'd say that she was great in the Hobbit. Like, she's definitely better in other things. She's bad, but not on the same level as Greasebag. Bad to terrible. Okay, so given that, so we've got, I reject her being mostly functional. Given most of you say bad, but then if we combine terrible and breaks the film's non-character, then most of you say terrible, so I am going to say terrible. I think she's probably better than... Let's put her at the top of terrible. She's not quite as bad as some of the others. Okay. Endy poll. Okay. Now we come to the first of the dwarves. So, let me remake the poll. And you may need to wait until I start my explanation in the script before you know which dwarf is which, unless, like me, you know who is who, because I've spent way too much time looking at these films. What do I even put as options here? I think most of the dwarves are very middling, so... Okay, the first character, the first Hobbit, not Hobbit, the first dwarf is Dory, which is this one. So, Dory has 20 minutes and 15 seconds of screen time. He is shown to be slightly bipolar and appears to suffer from intense mood swings. On some occasions, Dory is seen to be highly cultured and somewhat effeminate, particularly for a dwarf, and he is very well spoken. On other occasions, he has a short temper, is very aggressive, and is prone to violence if left unrestrained. His main relationship in the films is with Ori, to whom he fulfills a parental role, frequently taking care of or protecting the much younger and more naive Ori. Dory is ultimately very forgettable, and much of what I have gathered about Dory's bipolar characterization was almost certainly unintentional, and was likely as a result of Dory being one of the, quote, other dwarves to whom lines of dialogue would be distributed as and when it was deemed that they had not spoken in a while. Okay, yeah, what do we think of Dory? You guys are saying inoffensive, mostly functional. The bi and racist one? I don't think he's bi or racist. What the fuck? Unless we're getting confused. They're saying that, I can't think of any of the dwarves that are bi or racist. Actually, yeah, Thorin might be racist. We'll get to that later. But, okay. 13 dwarves to get through, so... Non-character is I don't think any of the dwarves fall into non-character. Well, no, there's an argument you can make for two of them, but I don't think Dory is one of them. Film guy says, I never noticed his bipolarness till I watched your video. Lord Wahoo says, who was the one complaining about not having meat? That was Dwalin, who we will be doing last because he's over here at the end. Okay, yeah, I don't think we need to spend too much time on this. Inoffensive, mostly functional. I'm thinking that if... Where's he gone? Oh yeah, he's up here. I think if he was in Rings of Power, he would be one of the better characters, so for that reason, I'm putting him in inoffensive. Oh, yeah. Before I move on, we have a super chat from Tony Cass. Thank you, sir. Dory was a very poor man's Incredible Hulk. I just wish that there were more scenes of him just letting rip. Because we have a handful of times where he is sort of held back, but then there's only, like, I think there's one scene I can think of where we see him properly going for it, and that's a deleted scene. So, yeah. Thank you, though, for the super chat. Right, next dwarf. Next dwarf is... this one. I really don't know what options to put on some of these, because I think it's going to be all over the place. Well, because I typed this in a special order, good is at the bottom. So if you think he's good, click on the one at the bottom. The Master El Matador Del Mar says there seems to be some confusion when it comes to rating a character or their purpose in the film. So that's kind of why I wanted to open it up to all of you guys rather than have me just do it. So my criteria for where I personally would put a character is it's irrespective of what their function in the story is. Hence why I would put Legolas there and Thranduil there. However, given that the general consensus is that the character is not as good as I think they are because of how much time this film spends doing other things, that's why I'm ranking them lower. But people are going to have different criteria for when judging these characters. But yeah, that's the way that I view it. Oh yeah. Super chat from Happy Nihilist. Snowbow Baggins and the 13 middlingly written dwarves. I think that... we'll come back to that when we get to the end, because some of them I think are maybe better than you guys are expecting. But yes, thank you again for the super chat. Right. The next dwarf is... Nori. And I can already hear you guys going, who is Nori? Nori is this one, the one with the triangle on his head. Okay. Up next is Nori, who appears for 20 minutes and 30 seconds. Nori is probably the dwarf with the least amount of characterization. We learn that he really likes gold. He is extremely rude to his hosts. He is a thieving asshole, indicating that he is also very selfish and inconsiderate. Like many of the dwarves, he is not superstitious, and he butts heads with Dwalin at one point after he suggests that they flee from a confrontation. Nori is totally forgettable, and the only reason he is in the film is because there needed to be 13 dwarves. Okay. Oh, shit. Okay, I think I've missed two super chats. So firstly, a Tree Man, Wife Fund. Thank you. The wife will be happy to hear it. We're actually going out and doing some stuff tomorrow, so I will spend the wife fund on the wife. Thank you. And Mega Hobbit says, Bilbo Swaggins and his pals the dwarves. Indeed. Will the Hobbit be better than the upcoming Snow White film? We will have to see. I don't know, is the answer. So what do you guys, I might have to redo this poll, because most of you guys are saying terrible / non-character, and I'm guessing most of you are saying non-character, but then a lot of you are saying inoffensive, mostly functional. So, non-character, I remember literally nothing about him. He loves stealing stuff. The most non-character of all the dwarves. The guy with the axe in his head. No, that's Biffa. So the guy, this is the one who's a bit of a, well, I'm not going to use mean words. The guy who likes to steal lots of money. Okay, non-character. Oh yeah, he lacks too much. He is inoffensive. If not bad, then he didn't do much. Oh shit! And sorry, Jesus, again another super chat. So thank you for these super chats, guys. So Thorin is a. This is from Arthur. Thorin is a weird mix of excellent and terrible. That is one of the most frustrating things about him, which you will hear when I get to that character. But yeah, that's why it is so disappointing, because in the book edits, the M4 book edit that I watched, he's fantastic because they cut out all the bullshit. Okay. Yes, we're making a long-term deposit. This is that character. Okay, I'm going to make an executive decision. I'm going to say, I think most of the guys that said he is, we're going to go with bad, because he's somewhere between terrible and mostly functional, and even though the least of you said bad, yeah, I think we're going to have to do that. Because otherwise I have to remake the poll. And I'm not sure I want to do that. Okay, next character. The next one is this one. Oh no, that's start Q&A. Get rid of Q&A. We don't want the Q&A. You forgot the scene where Nori touches the salad. That is not Nori. That is Dwalin. Or Ori, depending on the salad that you're referring to. Okay, the next character is Oin. And if you don't know who that is, it's this one. He's the guy that's... he's deaf and he's a medic. Okay. Right. Next is Oin, who appears for 20 minutes and 45 seconds. Oin is, like most of the dwarves, extremely simplistic. However, he does have a bit more going for him than many of the others. Oin is initially characterized as the deaf one. He always carries his ear trumpet with him in order to communicate, and continues to carry it after it is squashed by goblins. He is clearly older than most of the others, and believes in the prophecy, possibly indicating that the reason he decided to join Thorin is due to his faith in the prophecy. Oin is later established as being a skilled medic, as he stays behind in Lake Town to heal Keely, rather than accompanying Thorin, indicating that his priority is to help the wounded. However, as soon as they escape Lake Town, Oin does not appear to consider staying and helping the wounded civilians, which would have been the perfect opportunity to develop him a little, but of course this facet was not explored, presumably in favor of giving the love triangle additional screen time. Oin, like many of the dwarves, is also occasionally an idiot, as in one notable instance he seems to believe antagonizing his captors to be handling this. And the scene I'm referring to there is when they escape, when they're confronting the Goblin King, and he says, "Don't worry, I'll handle this," and then he's like, "Oh, you've got to speak up because you squashed my trumpet." So, it's meant to be funny, I guess, but yeah. Okay. Most of you guys are saying mostly functional. I don't mind Oin. Although saying that, yeah, I guess Oin is probably a little bit more contradictory than Dory. I think I like Dory more than Oin. I don't think I'm going to move Dory. So, comments. What do we get? He's a nice old guy. He died in Khazad-dûm, and this is how they handle him. Did Oin? I know Ori did, and I know, obviously Balin did. I don't know if Oin did. Correct me if I'm wrong, book people, because I don't know. Oin and Gloin are my favorites. He's a dwarf and he's deaf. That's it. Non-character. Non-character, as his deafness only exists to make him memorable. It's very hard to say because he's, again, forgettable. You're 100% right on the dwarves being more or less all the same character. They have a very small amount of differentiation, which I'm not going to go through now because I have a bit on that in the autopsy. But for now, we're just going to keep it specifically about what their individual characterization is. No, Space Talon. Wasn't he the one who wrote the book in the mine? The one that wrote the book in the mine was Ori, and I'm going to get to him very soon because I mentioned that. So you guys are saying mostly functional. I think I completely agree. I don't really have much of a problem with Oin. Okay, the next one is... Changing the categories on this one. The next one is Biffa, which is the one with the axe in his head. Okay, Biffa is an interesting one. He appears for 21 minutes and 15 seconds, and we know essentially nothing about him. He, of course, has an axe in his face, so he presumably is or was a fighter. I had assumed that he was cognitively challenged as a result of the axe lodged in his brain, which makes an amount of sense, but it turns out that he was speaking Dwarvish the entire time rather than gibberish, meaning that the intention here was that his injury affected what language he was able to speak, which makes very slightly less sense. The idea that maybe one of the dwarves was unable or unwilling to speak English is an interesting one. The idea that Biffa lost the ability to speak English due to a head injury is farcical. Biffa is a joke of a character, and whilst that joke was mildly amusing, there is nothing to his character beyond this. Right. What do we have to say? Non-character, that's pretty much what I was expecting. So I think there is an argument to be made that he is mostly functional or bad, but I absolutely am willing to go with the majority on here. Non-character, I think, applies to him. Okay, so Jamarcus Russell says, Oin did die in Khazad-dûm, the Watcher in the water got him. I did not know that. Thank you for telling me. Cthulhu killed Oin. Okay. Okay. Perfect. Excellent. Yeah, we can't be putting him that high. Jesus. He's an axe hole. Yeah, that's not a tier, unfortunately. Biffa without the axe in the extended cut was actually the one thing I laughed at rather than at Random Phil Talk. Yeah. That is one of the few scenes that actually made me laugh as well. But it's got to do more than be funny to make him a decent character, unfortunately. the axe comes out of his head at one point with no repercussions. I do also like in that extended scene, it's extremely dumb and it does not belong in the film at all. But I do find it very funny how Bomber tries to give back the axe that has been causing Biffa that much torment for however long, like a decades, we don't know. And he just thinks that he wants it back because it's his. He doesn't understand that maybe Biffa would never want to see that thing again. So yeah, it's funny, but you got to do better than that for it to be in the film. So we're going to put Biffa in non-character. Okay, next character. Okay, this one. Better hurry. The next character is Smaug. Okay, Smaug appears for 21 minutes and 30 seconds, 17 minutes of which is in the Desolation of Smaug. He's established as being highly egotistical, proud and vain, believing himself to be virtually invincible. He is clearly unhinged and psychopathic, and he does what he does for no reason other than that no one can stop him. In his discussion with Bilbo, he does seem to be genuinely curious about him, and he is also very intelligent, perceptive, and outwardly polite. He is shown on multiple occasions to be sadistic, to relish in the misery of others, as well as being very theatrical in his delivery of death and destruction. The prolonged chase sequence in the Desolation of Smaug, however, reduces him to a rabid animal with no personality, whose sole purpose is to kill the dwarves. This sequence is one that actively damages Smaug as a character, as the writers decided that they wanted him to be both intelligent and articulate for his conversation with Bilbo, but also that they wanted him to be a brainless movie monster for the chase scene. If this sequence were not in the film, Smaug would improve as a character by an order of magnitude. Additionally, Smaug, simply put, goes out like a bitch. He can clearly see both Bard and Bane on the bell tower, and he is also very aware of the weak spot in his own armor, and yet he does not show any urgency in preventing them from constructing a makeshift siege weapon to bring him down, preferring to taunt and mock Bard about the imminent death of both him and his son. This is partially justified by Smaug's overconfidence and vanity, and also means that his own egotism led to his demise. However, this doesn't entirely work, because as depicted in the film, Smaug chose to let Bard try to kill him, presumably believing that he would fail, which is at odds with his foreknowledge of his own weak spot, as well as his supposed high level of intelligence. So what I will say before thinking about this or looking at the poll or the comments is that in the M4 book edit, Smaug is unironically pretty much right there. Every problem that I had with Smaug is removed from that cut of the film. He's fantastic in that cut. Okay, you guys are saying good/excellent. So I'm going to scroll up and just see what comments we have. If it weren't for the abruptness of his death or the gold statue, he would be perfect. Melanistic Yemen, yeah, well, yeah, and his behavior during the chase scene where he's just giant dinosaur, I guess. Leviathan says perfect until he stops being a person. Smaug is fantastic. Realistic Delinquent says I think he's too stupid and too vulnerable. Inglorious Baxter says amazing, just give me 3 films of Bilbo, Smaug, and Gollum. Yeah, the best scene in fucking in these films is Bilbo talking with like Smaug and talking with Gollum and then talking with Thorin, I think. The problem is that you have the scene immediately afterwards with Smaug. So the question is, how much does that knock him down? Does it knock him down 1 peg or 2? Smaug is so good when he first appears, then he becomes a complete bean brain. Strange fitty. Yeah, you're not wrong. Fenrir, welcome to the stream. I hope you enjoy and feel free to catch up. Or you can obviously watch live if you want to partake in the voting and the polling. I'd say we're maybe halfway, maybe slightly under halfway, because there's quite a bit I have to say about the final 3 characters. Okay, so most of you guys obviously are saying like good or excellent. I think Smaug is either excellent or good, given the way he is at the end of Desolation of Smaug. I can't put him in excellent because I don't like anything he does in his final scene in that film. Well, no, sorry, not his final scene in the film. The final scene in the film is good. It's the whole ridiculous chase scene. And unfortunately, it reduces him. It makes him seem like an idiot. Whereas the trolls are already idiots. Whereas Smaug, yeah. Smaug is meant to be smart, but he's a dum-dum. So we're going to put him in good. Okay. Who is next? Who's this? While I do the poll, we have another super chat from Arthur. Thank you so much. So, I think the comparatively amazing scenes Smaug brings in these movies justifies him reaching excellent. I want to agree, but then I also want to suggest that you rewatch the bad scenes with Smaug, because we have to consider everything. If we were going with just the best that the character reaches, then Thorin would also be up here. And he can't be, I'm afraid. But thank you for the super chat. And another super chat from Wyland. So the best scenes in the trilogy are Bilbo conversations from the book. Huh, weird. Yeah, that was my recollection before I started doing this series, and I'm sticking with it. That is still my opinion. Okay, I'm not really sure what options to put here. Okay, the next character is... It's Gloin, Gimli's dad, for anyone who was unaware of which dwarf we were talking about. So, next up is Gloin, who appears for 21 minutes and 30 seconds. Gloin is extremely sparsely characterized. He, like Oin, is superstitious, having faith in the prophecy, and he is shown on multiple occasions to really like gold. However, unlike Nori, he does not appear to be an arsehole in his desire to accumulate wealth. Gloin is, of course, Gimli's father, and my presumption is that the writers decided not to bother characterizing him beyond his familial connection to a character that we know from The Lord of the Rings. So you guys say, wasn't he a banker? If that's the case in the book, that is not the case in the film. No way he has that much screen time. He does. This is the thing, is that the dwarves have a lot of screen time because they are there all the time. Even if they're not doing anything, they're constantly there, which is nuts. Does he do anything plot relevant? No. The only 2 times when... I guess there's 3 times I can think of where he is the one that makes a decision so that something happens, which is when he says, oh, well, in that case, lead on, when he learns that they're going to, that the elves are going to feed them.
It's all coming together.
And also he refuses to pay up to pay Bard. And then when he sees the Lonely Mountain and remembers why he's here, he then decides to pay Bard. Super chat from Tony Cass. Thank you. So Gloin has an inexcusable memberberry moment. Yes, he absolutely does. But that is not a character problem. That is the way that the character is used. Because nothing that he does in that scene is in any way out of character. It's just that the writers decided to make the character show someone, or they decided to make Legolas say, oh, is this a picture of your wife? And he's like, no, that's Gimli, which is exactly what he would say. So it's not out of character and it's not a problem, but I completely accept the point that it's unforgivable fan service. So you guys are saying mostly functional. I'm not sure that he's a non-character, which is what the rest of you are saying. I'm thinking mostly functional. Gloin was certainly a character in the movie.
It's all coming together.
He just blends in. Fan service. He's only here to facilitate Gimli's name being dropped to Legolas is bad. He's not even characterized. His duty was key jangling. Oh, sorry. Super chat again from Arthur. Thank you. So Gloin was their best outlet for justifiable yet subtle memberberries, but they blew it in favor of one way too obvious and dumbed down moment. Yeah, I think I completely agree with that, because Gloin is the one that basically everyone would have known going in, which then makes me wonder why they didn't give him a bigger role, because there are dwarves, like I guess the big 4 or big 5 if you include Thorin, have much larger roles than Gloin. So I'm kind of surprised that they didn't give Gloin a larger role. Okay, so I'm going to go with mostly functional. And just because he doesn't necessarily have a character flaw, Biff, doesn't necessarily mean that he is inoffensive. I don't think, at least. I'd need to hear an argument on that, but for now, where's he gone? He's there. He's going mostly functional. Okay, Next character. Poll time. Oh yeah, here we go. Okay, this one is going to potentially be polarizing. What the hell do I put? I think I'm just going to use the same tiers for most of these dwarves, actually. I just have to type them in again because it doesn't remember them. Thank you, YouTube. Okay, the next character is Ori. This one. So, Ori appears for 21 minutes and 30 seconds. He is for some reason extremely childish and clumsy and is arguably the Jar Jar Binks of the Hobbit Trilogy. Thankfully, however, he is nowhere near as pivotal as Jar Jar, so he is relatively easy to ignore. Excuse me. He appears to be very clean, is relatively polite, and likes to tidy up after himself. Ori is shown to be socially oblivious and makes a fool of himself without realizing. He says dumb things, is implied to be dumb by the other characters, but seems incapable of understanding why his behavior would prompt this response. He is also the youngest in the party. He appears to be a scribe rather than a warrior, which is further supported by the fact that the corpse Gandalf takes the book from in Fellowship of the Ring was Ori's corpse. My guess is that the writers started with the knowledge that Ori was a scribe, and so turned him into the autistic nerd of the party. And so that is where much of the childish humor comes from, with regard to his characterization. Ori even deliberately looks to Dory after misbehaving, as if to say, ho ho ho, look at me, I'm being naughty, in a manner not unlike that of an unruly 7-year-old. However, he is actually the first of the dwarves to try and save Bilbo after the Thunder Battle, indicating that he is extremely brave and more than willing to risk his life to save others. What do we think about Ori? Ori is not the fruity one. I think Dory's the fruity one. No, Ori is the one who I explained had learning difficulties. But yeah, whether he is supposed to is a question that I don't know. I don't have an answer for that. So without reading your comments, which I will read in a second, my take on Ori has changed a little bit. I kind of view him similar to Radagast in that the way the character is portrayed pisses me off, but what he does is not really a problem. So, poll-wise, you guys are pretty much torn between mostly functional and bad. So let's see what the comments say. Mostly functional. Luke says, I hate this dwarf. Melanistic Yemen says, I grew irrationally angry every time he spoke. Realistic Delinquent, who tells Bilbo to leave in the cave? That is Boffer, who we will get to soon. Bad. Where are we? Inoffensive. He has a few characteristics and he does exist. Mostly functional. Everyone else's character is worse for having him tag along. Yeah, that's the thing, is that Thorin has justification for bringing everyone, and it's like they're loyal, and I would take each of them over an army from the other kingdoms. I forget exactly what the line is. And like in the case of Dwalin, I can be like, okay, yeah, I can understand you taking Dwalin. Ori? You're taking Ori? Yeah. So he reflects badly on some of the other characters, but I think him on his own is not necessarily a problem. And regarding his, Alberto Fernandez, offensive haircut. So his haircut was added fairly late in the character design. I found in the behind-the-scenes footage that the original design for Ori, there were two different versions. The one was like the face and the beard, and then there was another one that was totally different, and it had the like bowl cut of the hair. And then Peter Jackson just walked in and said, what if we slam those two designs together? And then they put that wig on that prosthetic and were like, they were just laughing, like rolling over laughing because of what he looked like. So yeah, maybe that tells you that they wanted him to look funny, which, I mean, he does. So yeah, he's definitely a liability. I am going to lean towards bad. Most of you guys say mostly functional, but I'm going to lean towards bad. I think that, yeah, I think he's worse than Gloin and Oin, for example. Okay. Next character is Makety Paul. Bomber. So, Bomber appears for 21 minutes 45 seconds. Like Biffa, Bomber is a one-note character, and that one note is that he is fat. There are a handful of gags along the lines of, wow, isn't it funny that the fat one can do that? Bomber doesn't seem to be able to speak whatsoever, although in the extended cut of Battle of Five Armies, he says, here you go, cousin, and I have absolutely no idea why this is the one time he speaks. I don't know what to draw from this, other than that it is dumb. I think that, yeah, Biffa and Bomber are the two that you can argue are non-characters. Let's see. Yeah, most of you guys are saying non-characters. So while I wait for the comments to come in, going by the behind-the-scenes footage, Stephen, I can't remember the guy's name, Stephen something, who played Bomber, really got into what he had a really clear idea of what I think he wanted the character to be. And there's the extended, I think it's only in the extended scene, where you see him blowing the horn at the gates of Erebor as they slam the bell through the thing and then they all charge out. And you see that shot for a couple of seconds, but when they actually filmed it, the actor was like in tears because he was thinking that that was going to be like an extremely emotional moment. And I guess maybe it is supposed to be, but given how it came about, that's just all lost completely. So the actor really did seem to give it his all. Even with a character as ridiculous as Bomber, and try to give him a bit more humanity or dwarfanity, I guess, I don't know, but yeah. So yeah, watch the behind the scenes of Bomber. There's quite a lot in there that is a little bit enlightening. Okay, so you guys say non-character, disgrace of a Tolkien character. He's just big ginger. He's there for the fat jokes and nothing else. He just has a funny face. Jamarcus Russell says, in the book, he got so fat that he could no longer move, and it took the remaining 6 dwarves to lift him. I didn't realize that. I actually didn't realize that Bomber was the fat one in the books. I wasn't sure if they had just made him massive so that there is a big one. Yeah. Super chat from Tony Cass. The barrel scene can't be overcome by the horn blowing. Yeah, the barrel scene... There are problems with the barrel scene. Let's not get into that. But thank you so much for the super chat. There was another comment I wanted to read. Where's it gone quickly? Wyland, non-character. They had no idea what they wanted to do with him. They just made him lame, predictable jokes about him. He exists to be a joke. Anne Gray, yes. And Alberto Fernandez, his barrel has more personality. Let's leave it there. So yeah, Bomber is a non-character. Okay, next up. This one is definitely going to be polarizing. I've said that a few times, but I genuinely think this one will be. Okay, the next character is Boffer, or Bofer, because the film uses both pronunciations, so I'm going to call him Boffer, which is this one right here. Okay, Boffer appears for 26 minutes and 15 seconds, which is very slightly less time than we spent with Boromir in The Lord of the Rings. Boffer is the first dwarf that has anything approaching an adequate level of characterization. However, his characterization is inconsistent at best. Boffer is repeatedly shown to look out for Bilbo. He is highly observant and seems to have a very close relationship with Bilbo in particular. He is very loyal, both to Bilbo and Thorin. He is skeptical, and he seems knowledgeable about dragons. However, he is also very insensitive and does not value other people's possessions. He seems entirely incapable of reading social cues, is unruly, sarcastic, and cartoonishly unintelligent. Boffer has 2 scenes that I think are mostly excellent. The scene where he confronts Bilbo as he tries to return to Rivendell, and the scene where he allows Bilbo to leave Erebor. Both of these scenes are fully coherent with the character that I think the writers wanted Boffer to be. He is the friendly, approachable one. He is Bilbo's anchor, and the writer's way of allowing Bilbo to emotionally bond with one specific dwarf, rather than all 13 of them. However, like many characters in these films, Boffer is also used for comedy that reduces him to a bumbling moron, and although he has development, much of that development is incoherent with what he does in his filler scenes. Okay, you guys like Boffer a lot more than me. When he's good, he's really good, but there's a lot that's just bad. So, right, comments. What do we got? What do we got? Both of these nuts. We got like 6 comments saying both of these nuts. Okay. Buffer has some of my favorite scenes with Bilbo, film guy. Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. Melanistic Yemen says, I really like how he has a similar convo with Bilbo at the start and the end of the journey. Abso-fucking-lutely. I really like both of those scenes, and if that was it, this character would be, like, good, if not excellent. Hans Wurst says, I actually remember him because he pointed out how much he pays attention to Bilbo. Yeah, that is something he does repeatedly, although there's one time in... This is, I think, one of the times when, like, it's a casualty of the writers just feeding the dwarves things to do when they hadn't done things in a while. In Unexpected Journey, when Bilbo doesn't get captured by the goblins, Nori is the one that turns around and sees him. When maybe it probably should have been Bomber, because Bomber cares, Nori doesn't. But anyway. Great scenes with Bilbo. He has a dumb scene in the opening of Desolation, but he's mostly okay. Nesbitt is a great actor. Yeah, absolutely. He is definitely one of the best. Monkey Man Matt says he only has a few scenes of note, but they are good. Shame he is basically fifth fiddle to everyone else because of the poor script management. And Rob Sanderson says they bulked out the part with too much filler to give the famous actor more to do. That was to the detriment of the character. Yes, I think I agree, and I think, given what you guys are saying... Where's he gone? He's up there. I keep forgetting that I put them up there. We're going to put him in inoffensive. I think there are more problems with him than there are with, which one's this? Dory. But there's also stuff with Boffa that's better than stuff with Dory. So we'll leave that right there. Right, next character. Ooh. Okay. How are we doing, chat? We still conscious? Hopefully we're not drinking too much. Unless it's water, I guess. Okay, the next character is Bard/Gaston. Okay. He appears for 27 minutes. He is one of the better parts of the trilogy, generally speaking, although he is ultimately unable to escape from the writers wanting to give him a far larger role than he had in the books, but not knowing what they wanted to actually do with him. Bard is shown to be highly confident, is willing to manipulate people in order to get paid, and he is willing to break the law for money. Bard is primarily concerned with providing for his family, and he is shown to not be wealthy, which explains his willingness to earn money outside of the law. He is initially shown to be somewhat morally grey, however this ambiguity does not last very long at all. We soon learn that Bard is the town hero, and that he has a habit of doing what's best for the people of Lake Town, which causes conflict between him and the powers that be, as the powers that be have a habit of doing what's worst for the people of Lake Town. He is revealed to be the descendant of Girion, Lord of Dale, yet Bard shows no desire to become a leader himself, and he is almost embarrassed and ashamed of Girion's failure to kill Smaug over a century prior. He is nevertheless forced to lead the people of Lake Town due to the events of the film, a role that he ultimately embraces by the end. He is shown to be used to dealing with strangers and is able to play into their needs in order to get paid. Bard is extremely brave and proactive, he is honourable, and he does his utmost to avoid needless violence. However, Bard is also shown to have varying levels of intelligence depending on what the scene requires. He seems confident in his skills as a smuggler, yet his abilities as a smuggler leave much to be desired. He is extremely forgetful and also places an unfathomable and unjustifiable level of trust in Alfred, a decision which reasonably could have led to many needless deaths. Bard's character arc, I think, or I assume, is intended to be that he goes from a somewhat down-on-his-luck commoner struggling to make ends meet, and he gradually embraces his destiny as the only one who can kill the dragon and save the town. Fundamentally, I have no problem with the films expanding on the character of Bard. In the source material, Bard is the captain of a company of archers, and he is also the descendant of Girion. That's it. And whilst I do think it may well have been anticlimactic to have some random guy kill Smaug, I do wish that the character work we received for Bard had not detracted from this character arc. As depicted in the films, Bard goes from the town hero to the town hero. Okay, a couple of super chats came in, so I'm going to read those, then I'll check the pulse. So, Rob Sanderson, decaf coffee every single day, the joy. Well, I hope you enjoy. And yeah, thank you for the super chat. Justin Brush, his good parts generally outweigh his moronic trust of Greasebag. I want to agree with that. The question is, how high was he before his moronic trust of Greaseback? Thank you for the super chat, though. And Arthur, forgetting about the arrow is the worst plot hole. So, firstly, thank you for the super chat. So the defense that I would have on that is, again, not necessarily... There is a way to divert the blame from him to the way that the writers wrote that scene. Because what he knew at that point was that his son Bane had taken the Black Arrow to hide it somewhere. And he's not with his son when he breaks out of prison. So he doesn't know where the Black Arrow is. So him deciding to climb the bell tower to then try and bring down Smaug, that's the only thing he can do. Other than leave, obviously, but he's unwilling to leave. So it's possible that he didn't forget about the Black Arrow, but that he just didn't know where it was. And then the ridiculous bit is when his son brings it to him, because he called him Gaston, because Bard had already gone to the bell tower to fire regular arrows at Smaug. So I'm not sure that that reflects badly on him as a character, but it absolutely is a bad scene. So poll-wise, you guys are 32, 31, and 33% excellent, good, inoffensive, and mostly functional. So Jesus Christ, there's a lot of disparity there. Sorry, not a lot of disparity there. Okay, let's check the comments and see if we can distinguish. Danny says, apart from the dragon shooting scene, he's pretty good. And his trusting of Greasebag, I would say, but yes. He's not terrible, but the plot doesn't do him many favors. From Bryce, yep, correct. Rip his son's face. Film Guy says it would be cool if he was just a courageous guy. Yes, because essentially that's the way he was in the book. But expanding on him and turning him into the bargeman who actually gets to know the dwarves before all of that, I don't mind that. The problems come afterwards. So, yeah. Simon D'Amico says, Bard would have been an immensely better character if the Master and Greasebag didn't exist at all, but his script is bogged down by theirs. Completely agree with that, yes. Tony says, Bard had almost too much characterization. 27 minutes couldn't flush it all out. He loves his family. He's actually doing stuff. I'd say he's good. Wyland says, good. It's difficult to get over the inexplicably bizarre moments using his son as an anchor, not banishing Greasebag. Okay, I am going to make a decision here because, again, there is like 1% difference between him being in excellent and him being in mostly functional. So I would put him in good, personally, if not for the scene where he kills Smaug, and if not for his trusting of Greasebag after the fact. So I am going to put him in inoffensive, but he is towards the bottom of inoffensive because of the consequences of him trusting Greasebag, Alfred, is that a lot of people should have died. Or could. A lot of people could have died, and he just is like, well, you know, this guy seems right. Oh, I'll let you help a bit, because, you know, you helped a bit before, even though he spent the entire fucking film trying to throw him in prison for no reason. So we'll put him at the bottom of inoffensive or the top of mostly functional. Okay. Next character, and we've nearly hit 350 live watchers, which is ridiculous. Hello, everyone. Hope we are enjoying. Right, we've got a couple more dwarves to get through, and then we're going to be getting to the main characters. Uh-oh, there we go. Right, the next character is Feely. Which is, where's he gone? This one. So for anyone who did not know before I start reading this, and anyone who is at all familiar with EFAP lore, the actor who trained with the rest of the dwarf actors and then had to leave a week into filming, who was originally going to play Feely, was the guy who played the Don. I'll just leave that there. So there's multiple bits of the behind-the-scenes footage where you have the Don in Bag End in Feely, dressed as Feely. So yeah. Anyway, up next is Feely, who appears for 27 minutes and 30 seconds. Feely does not have nearly enough characterization to make his death as impactful as it should have been. He primarily plays second fiddle to Keely, whom the writers decided needed to be involved in a love triangle. So, Feely is a competent and enthusiastic fighter. He is shown to carry multiple weapons, and we see that he takes good care of them. He, along with his brother, seems to like playing pranks, and they are both prone to shirking their responsibilities, indicating that they are naive and inexperienced relative to the rest of the party. He prioritizes his brother's safety over helping Thorin retake Erebor, indicating that family means more to him than glory or gold. He is shown to be selfless and has a very clear moral compass, yet he occasionally is very reckless with other people's lives. He is an expert on all things related to keys and doors, although he tragically misses out on witnessing the key being used to open the door, and he dies through no fault of his own after being sent scouting by Thorin. Okay. Wow, okay. You guys have a pretty good opinion of Feely. Because I, without checking the poll, was going to put him in mostly functional. It looks like he might go one tier higher. We'll have to see what the comments say. So, lots of comments about the Don, obviously. Bing Ching Ling Kaching, sorry, your name is that. Kiki's more handsome generic brother. I don't know, is Feely more handsome than Keely? I'm not sure. Put the Don on your tier list. No, I can't do that, because I've already recorded the voiceover with the video where I explain what tier is what. So I can't do that, I'm afraid. Zach says, I think Feely is inoffensive. Him being a knife guy is kind of funny, but there's not much beyond that. Yeah, you're not wrong. The Pebble Institute says, I'm pretty sure all of Feely's scenes are either sharing screen time with Keely or the knife gag. Yes, that is the case. And in most of their scenes, Keely is the active one with the agency. So Feely just kind of sits there. Although, no, saying that, I do really like the scene where Feely confronts Thorin and says, like, you can't take this away from Keely. He's come this far. You've got to take him with you. And then ultimately he decides to stay behind with Keely. Like, I do really like that character moment for him. Mega Hobbit says, oh shit, I've lost your comment. Where's it gone? Mega Hobbit says, I honestly like Feely more than Keely. Absolutely. Yes. He seems to be a kleptomaniac and having so many extra knives. That was him, right? It's late. Yes, that was him. I think he's inoffensive. Okay. Yeah. So more than 50% of you guys are saying mostly functional. So I'm going to go with the flow here, and we're going to put him in mostly functional. Although I think he's well, I'm not going to order them now because it'll take too long. Also, to be clear on what I said before about the Don originally playing Feely, the reason why he left, I think, was because of health problems. He wanted to do the role, but he wasn't able to. Or he wasn't able to commit to that amount of filming, because they were filming for like 2.5 years or something stupid, so he wasn't able to commit to that. Right, next character. It is time. Right, the next character is Dwalin. This one. Dwalin appears for 31 minutes. Like Dane, he is a dwarf through and through, and he is very effective as a static side character. He does not play a crucial part in the narrative. He does not have any kind of arc. He is simply a hardened warrior who primarily serves to allow for character development of Thorin and Bilbo. Dwalin is very intimidating and blunt, and he seems to have a close kinship with Dane, yet he has zero patience for Bilbo on account of him being seemingly useless. He is notably the first dwarf to arrive at Bilbo's house, suggesting that he is extremely singular in his purpose, he is not distracted, and he is very direct in his actions. Dwalin is a brave and very capable fighter, frequently shown to be leading the charge into combat, and he is always ready to protect Thorin, either physically or through his words. He also reacts more emotionally than the other dwarves when he is unable to do so. As a side note, you guys are not going to fucking believe what I'm about to say here, by the way, because I found this in the appendices, and I was in disbelief. So, I found some footage of a scene that was filmed but never included as part of either cut of the film, in which Dwalin desperately fights his way through the orcs to get to Thorin during his duel with Azog, and then he reacts accordingly when he fails to get there in time. The mind boggles as to why this was not included, as in both released cuts of the film, Dwalin seems to simply disappear at Ravenhill until after Thorin has died. Anyway, Dwalin does not appear to care about money whatsoever, which further indicates that his life is dedicated to fighting his enemies and defending his king. He speaks his mind, has a short temper, and is shown to be suspicious of Bilbo after he escapes from the goblins, suggesting that Dwalin has trouble understanding any tactic other than brute force. Ultimately, however, despite his dedication to Thorin, he declares that he is unwilling to follow a madman, and this confrontation is what causes Thorin to reassess how crazy he is. Dwalin is very similar as a character to Dane, and although both are very much static characters, they are very clearly defined and remain consistent throughout the trilogy. Okay. So you guys overwhelmingly are saying that he is good. I personally would be putting him in excellent. But I will go through the comments here, because I don't really think there's any problems with Dwalin. And whereas like there are definitely problems with Thranduil, Smaug, and I guess Elrond. I think that Dwalin is excellent, but I'm going to read the arguments and then I'll read the comments and then I'll move him down if I am convinced. Okay. Melanistic Yemen says he's very memorable as the angry one, and he has a great line about Thorin being his king. Yes. Monkey Man Matt says probably the most consistent character from the dwarves, so I will say good. Fair enough. Robin Moore, his scene of questioning Thorin takes him to the top. So I think that was actually part of an extended scene, because I watched the M4 fan edit a second time with a friend who had never seen it, and he didn't remember seeing that Dwalin scene, and he had never seen the extended version. So that scene could be extended only. I don't know. Excellent, badass, cool characterization, played awesomely by McTavish. So as an actor, he's probably my favorite of the dwarves, definitely. Arthur says Dwalin is good, but doesn't get to use his character for anything meaningful, and so doesn't justify excellent. Maybe even inoffensive. I think I can... The problem is you can make that argument for Dane. Yeah, so Dwalin, as I explained, he's not particularly consequential, but everything he does, it completely lines up with who he is as a person. His existence is dedicated to protecting Thorin. Now we get to you guys in disbelief as to why they didn't put the Dwalin scene in the film. I'm okay with excellent. Wyland says, I want to say excellent. He is the dwarf that could have done so much if they had cut 6 or 7 useless dwarves from the film. Their presence drags him down. That's probably fair. Yeti Schwein says, not having any kind of arc keeps him from being excellent. So I disagree with that because, again, Dane is up there, but you don't have to have an arc to be excellent. If anything, having an arc in a film where the writing is as questionable as this, like, not questionable, it's very disparate in quality. The characters with the arcs are very unlikely to be at the top, because a character with an arc, you have to juggle more moving pieces. And there aren't really many moving pieces with Dwalin. He's just completely, yeah. Okay, any other comments that I want to read? Zach says he functions pretty much perfectly in his role as the strong fighter dwarf, and the confrontation scene with Thorin is excellent. Yep. Honored One, I think he's excellent. My third favorite dwarf. Rob says he's the best dwarf by a mile. The fact that Dwalin doesn't have an arc... Yeah, again, the fact that he doesn't have an arc, I am not going to use that as a justification to put him in good. Although I understand if people want to view it in that way. Okay, I am going to go with good, but he's at the top of good. We'll do that. Okay, next character is... The next character is Keeley. This one. Okay. Keeley appears for 36 minutes and 30 seconds. His arc seems to be that he goes from being very naive and eager to go on an adventure to someone who finds true love and then dies to save it. In principle, there is nothing wrong with this. The problems, as ever, are in the execution. Keely is shown to be very messy and disrespectful. He is consistently very reckless, which directly leads to him being badly wounded, but he continues to try to be of use to Thorin despite being injured. Keely thinks he is a ladies' man, but is seemingly insecure about his romantic disposition. He clearly cares about what the other dwarves think of him, indicating that he is out to prove himself, and he is disgusted by the idea of other people fighting his battles for him. Despite his feelings for Tauriel, he ultimately prioritizes his loyalty to Thorin over his desire to delve into her depths, which is reinforced by his apparent admiration for his uncle. Keely is, again, a very simple character with a very simple character arc. His purpose is to be the sexy one, and to become involved in a tragically doomed love story. If the love story were more fleshed out, less cheesy and less cringeworthy than it is, I would have a much better view of Keely as a whole. Ultimately, however, his expansion as a character serves mainly to detract from the core narrative and functions primarily as bloat. Okay. Okay, yeah, you guys are saying bad. I agree that I don't think he's terrible, but I think bad is pretty much where I would put him. Let's have a look at comments. Melanistic Gemin says he's not even a dwarf. Yeah, he doesn't look anything like a dwarf. Imposter dwarf, yes. Half-breed. Jesus Christ. Tony says, what does Keely have in his trousers? Okay, Fractal Face says, Keely, the heartthrob, glamorous, charming rogue with absolutely nothing dwarfish about him, dwarf, central to an absolutely cringe love triangle. Did he stumble in from a different movie? You have summed it up better than I could. Absolutely agree with that. HP is wondering why he can't choose excellent. It's because you're wrong if you think he's excellent, I'm afraid. Lord Wahoo says he breaks the films. He doesn't have a beard and he's therefore not a dwarf. Okay. Least dwarfy dwarf and subjected to the worst subplot in the trilogy from Justin. Yeah, the Dol Guldur subplot is definitely worse mechanically, but it was also more entertaining than the love triangle. So, Pebble Institute says, I feel like Keely is brought down more by the surrounding cringe than by his character writing. I think I agree with that. His writing and his dialogue is absolutely cringe, and everything he does that's related to the love triangle is cringe, but cringe on its own isn't bad. It's cringe. It's different. Bad. Sounds like we're going bad. Okay, Keely, you've been a bad boy. Okay. Right. There is one more secondary dwarf that we need to rank. Oh, shit. Yeah, we've only got 4 characters left to do. We'll be here for about another hour, is my guess. Okay.
Oh, yeah. It's all coming
Super
together.
chat from Wyland saying, in gratitude for the parenthetical poll descriptor. Parenthesis. What does parenthetical mean? I'm sorry. Oh, instituted in a parentheses. Oh, I see. Yeah, I get what you're referring to. Yes. I was thinking, like, did I put a parentheses in there? But no, I didn't. But yes, you're referring to the poll on the YouTube chat. Okay, right. Right, the next character, let me send the second poll out. Final secondary dwarf is, Jesus Christ, we've hit 360 views. Holy shit. And hey, everyone. Okay, Balin, this one. The beardy one. Okay, finally for the secondary dwarves, we have Balin, who appears for 40 minutes and 15 seconds. Balin is mostly excellent. He is shown to be friendly and polite, and we learn that he highly values peace. Like his brother Dwalin, he does not particularly care for wealth, and like Dwalin, he is extremely loyal to Thorin. It is implied that Balin and Thorin have the longest kinship, as Balin was the only member of the company that we see in the flashback sequences. It is implied that Balin was aware that Azog had survived the Battle of Moria, but the fact that he elected not to tell Thorin suggests that he is willing to deceive his king if he deems it necessary. This is further reinforced later in the trilogy, when he advises Bilbo not to reveal that he has the Arkenstone, as he feels it will exacerbate Thorin's madness. Balin is very scholarly and practical, is skilled at building trust and negotiating. He is shown to be compassionate, however, like all of the dwarves, he does not seem to have any comprehension that what happened to Lake Town was entirely their own fault. However, as this criticism applies to all of the dwarves, and as this comes about as a result of poor storytelling, I can't be too hard on Balin specifically. What are we thinking about Balin? Oh, fucking hell. Okay, all of you guys are saying good. In that case, I'm restarting the poll, and I'm putting excellent, because 87% of you guys are saying good. I'm restarting the poll. Let's do that again. Actually, fuck it. Let's do this. Right. Polls up there. Let me read through some comments. Balin easily beats Dwalin. That is an interesting one. I would not have said so, but I'm open to that. Bryce Emmons says Balin is good counsel to both Thorin and Bilbo. That is true, because he does serve that purpose to multiple characters. Hans says wise and with a kick-ass dwarvish beard. Approved, yes. Robin Moore says excellent. Film Guy says Balin is definitely the best dwarf, because when I was doing this before, I had that at Dwalin. It's interesting that you guys say Balin. Options are too low. Mega Hobbit says Balin was one of the better characters. He was wise, gave plenty of insight and wisdom to Bilbo, and his loyalty seeing Thorin's abilities in the Battle of Moria. He is really being dragged. I guess there's a second half of your comment, but yes, I think I agree with that. Excellent. At least he's smarter than the rest. Super chat quickly from Justin. Balin is supposed to be the wisest of the group, short of Gandalf, so I'm hardest on him for not feeling responsible for unleashing Smaug on Lake Town. So what we see in the films, I think it is completely reasonable to say that Balin is the wisest of the group, other than Gandalf. And the problem with him not having really feeling any guilt about what happened to Lake Town is a fault of the writing in general, not a fault of the writing with specific regard to Balin. That's not really that much of like a band-aid on Balin as a character, but maybe it stops him from being perfect. It would drag him down to excellent. But I do absolutely take your point. That problem will affect Balin more than it will affect Dory or someone. Someone else says, Balin was almost excellent if only they'd used him well in persuading Thorin to listen to the elves during that scene. I think you ran through it in your video. I'm trying to think which scene you mean, but I will take your word for it. Michael Hawkins says Balin is a character, and he seems to have his feelings in the group, and he seems to be consistent with most of the trilogy with a coherent through line. Completely, yes. Monkey Man Matt says his consistent choice of remaining silent and refusing to guide Thorin makes him odd. He is the scholar, and yet somehow he tried to stop him giving up the map to Elrond. Yeah, that's a point, actually. So him keeping his mouth shut and being willing to just sort of go along with Thorin at the end, I can completely buy that because his loyalty is to Thorin. He will die if Thorin says die. Whether that makes sense given everything else that we see of him is a question mark, I think. But I think that what we were seeing towards the end of Thorin's craziness is that he was more sad as to what had become of Thorin, rather than that he was sad that he was going to have to die because of Thorin. Him trying to stop him giving the map to Elrond, I feel like that the reason that happened was because Balin was the dwarf and he was there, and they wanted Thorin to sort of show that he had actively decided to give the map to Elrond. And the reason that happened to Balin is because he's the one that was there. So anyway, we talked about Balin for a little bit. So you guys are basically all saying excellent, and I think I'm willing to put him in excellent. That is fair. Okay. Next character. So we're now at the top 3. And brace yourselves for this, because I do have a fair bit to say about each of them, but we will do them one at a time. Okay. I am not going to be able to read your comments while I'm reading this, so I am going to have to scroll up a little bit afterwards. Okay, Gandalf is next. Obviously, you know who Gandalf is. So, he appears for 1 hour, 18 minutes, and 30 seconds, which is just 3 minutes shy of his screen time in The Lord of the Rings. Gandalf is quite unfortunately a casualty of this trilogy. Much of his characterization is in line with what we already know about him. However, more than one of his decisions are quite simply bafflingly stupid. Gandalf is playful, embellishes stories, and enjoys playing word games. He appreciates the simpler things in life, like smoking and drinking. And he states outright that he believes simple acts of kindness are what keep evil at bay. He is manipulative, although he only ever manipulates to serve the good of Middle-earth, rather than his own interests. This is evident by his admission that Azog is alive, as well as the entire nature of his plan to retake Erebor. Gandalf is highly motivated to push Bilbo out of his comfort zone, even going so far as to do the spooky voice thing from Fellowship to declare, if I say he is a burglar, then a burglar he is. He seems to want Bilbo to embrace what Gandalf considers to be his true self, and to reinvigorate his life with a sense of wonder and purpose. Gandalf also wants to help Thorin reclaim his home, although his reasons for doing this are either confusing or complex, depending on your perspective. Despite his investment in both Bilbo and Thorin, Gandalf is shown to prioritize his duty as a protector of Middle-earth over anyone's individual safety. However, he is also shown to prioritize the individual safety of Thrain over his duty as protector of Middle-earth. Gandalf's claimed reason for helping Thorin is that he does not want to risk Smaug siding with Sauron. This establishes Gandalf as being highly cautious and wary of Sauron's return, which is at odds with his seeming indifference at Bilbo suddenly finding a magic ring. Gandalf is also reckless, although when I say reckless, I don't mean to lump him in with characters like Keely or Dwalin. When I say Gandalf is reckless, what I mean to say is that he wants to die. Gandalf is a careless maniac who will willingly walk into obvious traps for no reason whatsoever. He also knows Bilbo has a magic ring, and yet he asks Alfred to make sure he doesn't leave, despite knowing Bilbo can turn invisible, a decision which nearly leads to Bilbo's death. And as a side note, what I mean by that is that the only reason why Bilbo was able to return to Erebor and nearly get killed by Thorin is because Gandalf didn't act on the knowledge that he had of him having the ring. Gandalf also orchestrates Thorin's return to Erebor despite being very aware of the evils of gold, the moral dubiousness of which is never explored whatsoever. Gandalf's explanation of Sauron's evil plan is utter nonsense, and yet the filmmakers nor the other characters present don't seem to be at all aware of this. Gandalf is one of the most iconic characters of all time, and it pains me to say that the longer we spent with him in this trilogy, the further he strayed from being the character we know. Most, if not all, of Gandalf's moments of questionable intellect are in scenes that were created or expanded in an effort to stretch the story of The Hobbit into something it is not. If those extra scenes were dispensed with, the inconsistencies of Gandalf would be disposed of alongside them. Okay. Let me do super chats quickly, then I'll check the poll. So, super chat from Arthur. Lord of the Rings Gandalf is one of the best characters in fiction. Abso-fucking-lutely. Hobbit Gandalf is good at best. Arguably stains his Lord of the Rings character. He definitely stains his Lord of the Rings character, and I think putting him at good is generous. But, nonetheless, thank you for the super chat. And super chat from Tony Cass. Gandalf's motives require knowledge he doesn't have. Can you clarify that? Because I'm curious. It may be that I know what you're talking about. I just can't think because my brain is kind of spaghettified after spending so much time on the autopsy. At me in chat, and then as I scroll down, I'll see your answer and then I'll read it. So, you guys are saying, okay, you guys definitely have a better view of Gandalf than me. So 34% say good, inoffensive, and mostly functional. 21% say bad. So let's look at comments. HP says he's one of 2 characters that breaks the films. I'm not sure that I agree with that, because his biggest crime is that he's an idiot. It's not that he does things that he can't do, it's that he does things that require that he's really dumb. Phantom Cat, generally good, but also breaks the film at times. Yep, I guess so. JSM says Gandalf sucked in The Hobbit. Justin says his writing comes dangerously close to breaking the Lord of the Rings trilogy more than once. I don't disagree with that. Melanistic Yemen says, I like him when he interacts with Bilbo, especially smoking at the start and at the end. Yep. But I hate him when he gives exposition and makes baffling decisions. He's a mixed bag, yep. Alistair Buckles, excuse me, says, great actor, misfortunately playing a bum. Yep. Monkey Man Matt says he is one of the worst written characters in these movies. He constantly puts himself in danger without forethought and puts the entire world at risk multiple times. I think that's, yeah, that pretty much sums up my thoughts on him. And given that those are my thoughts on him, I can't put him any higher than bad. Like the fact that it's Gandalf doesn't mean that he's higher than bad. Mega Hobbit says he is one I will argue actually breaks the movies. At the first movie, not so much, but the moment he goes to the subplot, it starts shaking his standing a lot. Yep. Frustratingly inconsistent. Okay, Tony says he wants to strengthen the defenses in the East without knowledge of the Necromancer or Sauron. So that, this may be explained in the books. It's honestly, I'm not going to defer to the books, but like, it's not particularly relevant to what he does in the films. It just requires that Gandalf is really, really, really cautious and that he takes his role as Defender of Middle-earth very seriously. Because his whole reason for wanting to help Thorin is to remove Smaug from the equation so that if something bad happens, Smaug won't make it worse. That doesn't require, in my view, that he has any knowledge of the Necromancer or Sauron. Rob says he's a different character. This Gandalf is bad. He's very close to being awful. A few good scenes does not make up for hideous decisions that are contrary to his character. And Nihilist says he has nonsensical motivations. Yeah, I mean, the poll, I feel, does not represent what you guys are saying. And what you guys are saying pretty much is in agreement with me. I think Gandalf is a bad character in The Hobbit.
Oh, yeah. It's all coming together.
Super chat from Arthur. Poor Sir Ian. At least it wasn't cats. Yeah, I guess at least he wasn't in Cats, if that's what you're referring to. Oh yeah, because the whole green screen thing. Yes. So we have a clarification here as well, quickly. So Lord Wahoo says in the book his motivation is because he found Thrain in the Necromancer's dungeon and promised him he'd deliver the key. This was before meeting Bilbo. What the fuck? Are you serious? That changes everything. I'm going to get angry and I'm going to have to rewrite and re-record a whole bunch of my autopsy if I start delving back into this. So that's Gandalf. Gandalf is bad. Okay. Next up, we know it's Thorin. Let's make the poll. Oh no, that's Q&A. We don't want to do a Q&A. We want to do a poll. I really don't know where you guys are going to want to put this guy. Okay. And again, if the poll goes tits up, then I will remake it once I have finished reading. So I actually have the most to say about Thorin. Okay. The character with the second highest amount of screen time is Thorin Oakenshield with 1 hour and 31 minutes 45 seconds. This is 1 minute less than Sam had in The Lord of the Rings. Thorin is incredibly important to the narrative flow of this trilogy. He is in many ways the protagonist, whereas Gandalf and Bilbo only facilitate his quest. Let's start with his positive traits. He is a very brave warrior who wants to reclaim his home. He highly values combat skills, and his core principles are loyalty and honor. He personally risks his life on multiple occasions to save members of his party. He is an inspirational leader, is skilled at playing crowds, and he clearly knows his dwarves very well. As in one instance, he immediately knew Gloin was the one not to contribute to the fund to pay Bard. He cares deeply about his people, is remorseful after he recovers from dragon sickness, and he is eventually willing to die in order to ensure that Azog is defeated. He places a high amount of trust in Gandalf, even in instances where he does not agree with him, such as the decision to hire Bilbo. He is nonetheless suspicious of Gandalf's motives. However, he seems willing to look past this, given that Gandalf is helping him achieve his own goal. He generally respects and trusts Gandalf's advice. However, he also decides to enter Erebor without Gandalf due to the time constraints, and given that Gandalf had clearly been delayed. Now on to Thorin's less positive traits. He is extremely stubborn, and he doesn't appear to care if his words offend people. He also frequently blames entire races for the failings of one individual. He hates elves because Thranduil didn't help his people. He hates orcs because Azog killed his grandfather. And he hates, or at least blames, men because Girion failed to kill Smaug. And I didn't write this bit in the script, but I did just recall when Thorin is, like, just after he's thrown a fit at Bilbo, he tells Gandalf something along the lines of, "I will never have dealings with Shire rats again." So again, he's kind of tarring all of the hobbits with the same brush. Anyway, where were we? He also frequently reacts emotionally rather than practically, indicating that he can be hot-headed. The most egregious example of this is when Thranduil offers to let Thorin go, provided Thorin promises to return the white gems to him. Instead of accepting, being released, and continuing on his quest, he says, "Fuck you, Thranduil, I can't trust you," even though Thranduil's deal requires that Thranduil do Thorin a favor first, and that Thorin return the favor later. Thorin does not need to rely on Thranduil to uphold anything, and so Thranduil's trustworthiness is irrelevant. It is possible that this is a deliberate attempt to show that at this point Thorin will absolutely not respect Thranduil, but the way it was written instead makes Thorin look like an overly emotional idiot. Due to the nature of some of the extended cartoon chase sequences, Thorin also appears to have insane plans that rely on blind luck, and occasionally is depicted as being outright unkillable. He also decides inexplicably to remove all of his armor before charging into battle, and evidently asks that the others do the same before telling his two nephews to split up and scout ahead, resulting in the rather predictable deaths of all three of them. Thorin seems to believe that Bilbo did not do anything to help during the troll encounter, because he says, "No thanks to your burglar," despite the fact that Thorin would be very aware of the fact that Bilbo's actions absolutely saved lives. He also inexplicably blames Bilbo for nearly dying as a result of the mountain coming alive. Thorin is occasionally shown to be an idiot, usually when he acts as one of the dwarves, rather than as an independent agent. He also appears to be suicidally hell-bent on killing Azog at one point, indicating that he cares more about vengeance than about the lives of his friends or retaking his home, which is simply a blatant contradiction of his core motivation. Thorin's namesake is also confusing. We can assume, while watching the first film, that he took the name Oakenshield from the oaken branch that he used to defend himself from Azog during the Battle of Moria. This is why he is referred to as Thorin Oakenshield. The problem with this is that in the second film, Azog refers to Thorin as Oakenshield. The direct quote is, "What of Oakenshield?" when he's talking to Sauron. It seems rather odd that Azog would choose to refer to Thorin by the utensil that he used to best him in battle, but if that wasn't enough, we also have Smaug referring to Thorin by the name Oakenshield. And the line there is, "I'm almost tempted to let you take it, if only to see Oakenshield suffer." We can maybe juggle our way out of the Azog contradiction, but there is no juggling out of the Smaug contradiction. The fact that Smaug refers to Thorin as Oakenshield means that at the point in time when Smaug attacked Erebor, 150 years prior and before the Battle of Moria, Thorin's name was Thorin Oakenshield. The only way this can make any sense is if the dwarf whose name is Oakenshield just so happened to use an oaken shield to defend himself in battle, which certainly reminds me of a certain character from Rings of Power who does what he does because his name means that he loves elves. The three most prominent developments for Thorin are his friendship with Bilbo, his succumbing to dragon sickness, and his relationship with elves. With regard to Bilbo, when Thorin first meets him, he chastises Bilbo, believing him to be useless, and he also does not particularly trust or value Bilbo, nor does he care for his safety. After Bilbo reveals that he escaped Goblin Town on his own, Thorin is reservedly impressed by Bilbo's bravery and commitment. He at this point realizes he may have misjudged him, and gives him the chance to earn his respect, which Bilbo does soon afterwards during the confrontation with Azog. And from this point on, dragon sickness aside, Thorin and Bilbo's friendship has been fully developed and will remain in stasis until the end of the trilogy, meaning that one of Thorin's two major developments is fully resolved in under 15 minutes. The decision to accelerate Thorin's acceptance of Bilbo likely came about as a result of stretching the latter half of this story into 2 movies, and the decision to expand the importance of the dragon sickness subplot. Speaking of, the dragon sickness development is also extremely quick, overcomplicated, and is resolved through no particular means other than that Thorin decided not to be crazy anymore. Throughout his descent into madness, we see that his love of gold grows, we see that he trusts but also doesn't trust Bilbo, we see him act directly in a dishonorable manner, and he also behaves irrationally to the point of absurdity. There isn't much to draw on in terms of his character during these scenes, nor is there anything to make of his sudden reprieve from his madness, beyond that he didn't want to be crazy. Finally, regarding his relationship with the elves, this one is relatively subtle but is developed rather well. Initially, Thorin despises elves for a perfectly valid reason. His first step towards accepting elven culture is in his use of the elven blade Orcrist, indicating that Thorin is willing to approach the use of elven weapons pragmatically after a nudge from Gandalf. He later seems cordial with Elrond, and after another nudge from Gandalf, he allows Elrond to look at the map. We later have the action scene in which Thorin saves Legolas's life, when Legolas was at this point trying to capture him in order to imprison him for a century, and in the final film, Legolas returns the favor, and in so doing returns Orcrist to him, allowing Thorin to defeat his nemesis whilst wielding an elven blade. I like this arc quite a bit, because it is very gradual, we only get small bits and pieces of it every now and then, and it never feels like it is forced into a story in which it does not belong. So, Thorin is absolutely a mixed bag of a character. Much of his characterization is rushed, some of it is simply incomplete, such as the fact that he never learns that Thrain was indeed still alive, nor does he ever learn of his fate in Dol Guldur. He primarily suffers from being forced to act like a clown whenever the dwarves do something collectively, as well as from the inanity of the dragon sickness subplot that the writers thrust upon him. However, when the writers allow him to be coherent, Thorin Oakenshield is occasionally a compelling protagonist. Okay, that was a long one. That I had more to say about Thorin than I do about Bilbo, so I got to scroll up a little bit. So, Super Chats first from Arthur. Needs breaks the films because he's unrealistically inconsistent. I'd believe it if they said they wrote him to have multiple personality disorder. You are not wrong. Whether I have to remake the poll and see if you guys want him in breaks the films, we will have to see. It's really unfortunate because, again, in the M4 book edit that removes all of the bullshit, I fucking love Thorin in that. Everything in the M4 book edit that I adore about Thorin is in the Hobbit Trilogy. It's just diluted with bullshit, which is why it's so annoying. But yes, thank you for the super chat. And Undercover Mallard says you passed Metal's Forge in viewers. Holy shit. Well, thank you all of you guys for being here. And again, thank you for the super chat, Mr. or Mrs., I guess, Undercover Mallard. Right, Paul, you guys are kind of torn between mostly functional and bad terrible. I do not believe that Thorin is mostly functional, but I am going to read the comments and see. Thorin is going to be tough. Zach says his highs are really high and his lows are really low. That is a perfect way to put it, yes. Hans Worst, there's a lot of good and a lot of bad, absolutely. Björn, sorry if I'm butchering your name. Thorin is also good, but also bad. Mostly functional doesn't fit him, though. The problem is that if you have a character who is good in some scenes and bad in others, then the character is bad. Like the fact that they are, that's basically why Gandalf is where he is. Evie says, I think Thorin could have been great, but the Dragon Sickness plot really drags his character down, in my opinion. Absolutely, yes. Colonel Falcar, too many of his actions contradict his character. Michael French, his core principles include honor, but he is the least honorable character ever when it's the time to settle his debts. So that will have been deliberate, and I think that does line up if you take the Dragon Sickness subplot as it appears in the films. If you've seen my videos, then you know what I think about that. And the Dragon Sickness subplot is terrible. It's, I think, probably the worst subplot in the films in terms of the damage that it does. But if Thorin is a crazy person who's really, really greedy, he is not going to be honorable at that point in time. So I think that makes sense if you buy into the whole Dragon Sickness thing. Monkey Man Matt says the second they reach Erebor, he leaps from good/decent to horrible. The fact that he would give up so easily makes no sense, and the entire goal is bad arc, just no. Archie Moore says Thorin is such an interesting case of an excellent character and a completely irrational one. Because of that inconsistency, he has to be terrible, despite how much I love his amazing bits. That's pretty much how I feel. And I see here, since I've been talking, that the poll has shifted more towards the bottom. Okay, any other comments that I want to read? Lauren says, breaks the film, a victim of poor inconsistent writing, and given his character's impact and influence on the films, this inconsistency is jarring and confusing. Absolutely, yes. JH says, completely ruined. His psychosis was the reason why 3 armies were fighting each other. The payoff, he has a vision of sinking into gold. Okay, I'm good now. Thanks. Ring a bell. Let's fight. Yep, pretty much. And Fractal Faye says, Thorin started off so well, but became worse the longer it went. His best scenes were great, powerful, charismatic, deep, but curing himself of madness and single-handedly winning the battle was terrible. Okay, I'm going to make a decision here. So I would put Thorin in bad because I don't think he's terrible. There is an argument that he breaks the films.
It's all coming together.
I'm not sure I want to put... No. I definitely don't want to put him on the same tier as Halbrand, Isildur, and Elrond from Rings of Power. So, super chat from Arthur quickly. So, Dragon Sickness could have been better with time skip. Absolutely. Which is pretty much what happens in the various fan edits that I've seen. So, would recommend. But yes, thank you for the super chat again. So, I'm going to put him in bad. I don't think he's mostly functional. I think he's barely functional, and therefore bad. I know I'm disagreeing with a whole bunch of you there, but unfortunately, that is my view, which is really a shame, because like I said, I really like the character in the various fan edits. Right. Bilbo time. Let's get up a poll. Right. Let's go. Bilbo Baggins clocks in at 2 hours and 9 minutes, 11 minutes shy of Frodo in The Lord of the Rings. Bilbo's character arc exemplifies two of the primary themes of the trilogy, the desire for a home and bravery. At the start of the film, Bilbo is a typical hobbit, although we hear it implied that when he was a child he was far more adventurous. Bilbo dislikes the idea of thrills, and he is seemingly content with living a simple life. He is timid, he is always on time, and he likes keeping to himself, until a certain wizard arrives and whisks him away on a magical journey. Upon meeting the dwarves, Bilbo is extremely patient and polite even when they are trashing his house, and he is very nervous and uncomfortable with their boisterous behavior. Bilbo clearly does have a repressed desire for adventure, however, as he of course decides to join the dwarves and Gandalf on their quest. He is not accepted at first, but after proving his usefulness to the party, he is embraced as one of them. Throughout the films, he gradually becomes more assertive, and he repeatedly demonstrates his extreme levels of bravery and loyalty. He becomes increasingly more comfortable with violence, ultimately taking part in the Battle of the Five Armies, when he could easily have fled. He is also willing to be the hero Thorin needed by betraying him in order to save him. Bilbo does occasionally doubt himself, he also sometimes speaks without thinking, and although he takes pity on Gollum after seeing his pain and suffering, he ultimately decides to keep the ring either because he considered it useful as it makes him invisible, or because he didn't want to risk Gollum using it to kill him. So I am going to continue reading that in 1 sec, but because 80-odd% of you guys are saying excellent/good, I'm going to remake the poll so that we have a bit more nuance. Right, poll's back up. Go for it. Okay. Now on to the confusing parts of Bilbo's characterization. Firstly, that bit I cut out, so I won't read that. Bilbo, like most characters, seems to be indestructible until the plot decides that he is not. He repeatedly fails to use the ring to escape danger or to rescue others when he easily could have. He is occasionally needlessly reckless and cocky, opting to taunt his enemies before he kills them. Regardless, Bilbo is for the most part a functional protagonist. His characterization is clear, as is his development throughout the trilogy. His relationship with Thorin is extremely rushed, which meant that in the second and third films, Bilbo frequently took a back seat to the other characters. In The Desolation of Smaug, in particular, Bilbo barely has any character development, and he simply rescues the dwarves every now and then. There are a few contradictions to his character, but one of the biggest crimes of these films is that they repeatedly divert the focus away from The Hobbit and onto things like romantic melodrama, massive battle sequences, and childish jokes. Okay. Let's check some comments, because going by the poll, you guys are saying excellent. That, I think I probably would have put him in towards the bottom end of good. But let's read some comments. Arthur says, Bilbo, best character in the movie. Okay. JSM, Bilbo was perfectly cast. Regardless of my view on the character, I think Martin Freeman did a fantastic job, yes. Samson says, the only thing dragging Bilbo down is the fact that the films forget he's the titular character. Yes, there's that. That is definitely a factor. Lim Lath says, Bilbo is the only character who maintained mostly consistent characterization. The changes from book to film are actually decent ones, and I love Martin Freeman. Of the three main characters, he's absolutely the best. There's just no context. No contest.
It's all coming together.
The question is, how good actually is he? Arthur, I will read your super chat when I scroll down to it. Thank you in advance, though, because otherwise I'm going to lose other comments. Monkey Man Matt says the most risque parts for Bilbo involve him misusing the ring or refusing to use it at all. They are bad, but do not directly damage the plot or other characters as a result. Yeah, I think I would agree, yes. Inglorious Baxter says he's one of the only characters that feels consistent between the two trilogies. It does feel like the same person. Yeah, him... well, honestly, him with Ian Holm, because Ian Holm obviously appears in the Hobbit films, and you can tell that he probably watched The Lord of the Rings multiple times in order to try and portray the same character, get some of the same like ticks in how he speaks. Yeah, he's great in that regard. Mega Hobbit says, I wouldn't out Bilbo, or put Bilbo, I'm guessing, on perfect, as he has... Yeah, you said contradictions, but the focus of the Hobbit movie really weakened Bilbo here. Yes, pretty much. Keegan says, to be honest, the only reason he's a good character is the actor. Martin Freeman is excellent, and I will forever be grateful for him. Yeah, how much of it comes from Martin Freeman? I think a lot. I think Martin Freeman gives one of the best performances in the films, but regardless, I do think Bilbo is still a strong character. Okay. Oh, damn it. What, YouTube chat jumps around every now and then. It's really annoying. So, super chat from Arthur. Last super chat. Well, thank you for all your super chats, sir. I would give Bilbo perfect if I could. He has the most screen time of any character, and yet he only has 1 to 2 bad moments and makes the best scenes, including the beginning and the end. Well, given what you've said, that sounds like he's going in excellent, then. Yeti Schwein says, most of your criticisms aren't character problems. The main criticism that I have of him is his questionable use of the ring. Which, that you could argue is maybe not a character problem, but yeah, how the character is used in the film is definitely more of a problem sometimes than what his actual decisions are. Scrolling down... Oh yeah, him taunting the spider. That is, I think, the biggest problem that I have with him. Undercover Mallard says, I think he does taunt enemies in the
it's all coming together.
Book. I assume that's meant to say, but he's usually invisible when he does it, so he has an inflated confidence due to such a large advantage. If he'd kept the ring on, I could have completely accepted him doing that, but yeah. Right, I'm going to read these 2 super chats, and then we're going to rank Bilbo. So, Tony Cass says, Bilbo 1v1 versus the Warg was too quick an escalation. Yes, that needed to be removed, but again, that's not Bilbo as a character. That's how the film uses the character to make, to progress the narrative, I guess. The criticism that I would more have in that scene is Bilbo running in to kill the orc that was about to execute Thorin. Like, maybe he would do that. If he was going to do that, he would definitely use the ring, but no one sees him coming, which means that he didn't have to use the ring, I guess. So, super chat from Mega Hobbit. The reason why I cannot give him perfect and at best excellent is due to Bilbo already getting kind of Gollum-y with the ring, which isn't how Bilbo was since he resisted that ring for over 50 years. Yeah, so that is something I do go into in the autopsy, but not in the character section, but I completely agree. He gets corrupt. But then the problem there is that the film is spending too much time exploring his corruption from the ring. That's not necessarily decisions that he's making. But yes, I agree that that's an issue with the films. And super chat from Wyland. Bilbo is excellent, weakened because the writers forgot that he is the titular character and wanted a love triangle. Right. Time to rank him. You guys, 54% of you are saying excellent. 35% are saying good. Given that we have Dwalin, Thranduil, Smaug, and Elrond in good, we're going to put Bilbo in good. And my justification for that is because of relatively minor things, like him not using the ring when he absolutely fucking would have used the ring. And him removing the ring so as to make fun of a spider before he stabs it in the noggin. Yeah, I can't say that he's as good as Dane or Dwalin. Or, obviously, Gollum. Or Wheelie Boy, of course. Balin, sorry, that is, not Dwalin. I can't say he's as good as those for basically that reason, but the fact that he's this high, I think, really is a testament to why so many people still like the Hobbit movies and can enjoy them, is because Bilbo, the main character, if we're ejecting Thorin, he's good. He's a solid character. He's a very solid protagonist. I have heard the argument as well that he's a more compelling protagonist than Frodo, which is, in the M4 book edit, I can accept that argument. I'm not sure I agree. In the theatrical and extended, fuck no, but yeah. Alberto Fernandez, Wheelie Boy. No, Wheelie Boy. He has wheels. He's the goblin scribe who goes down the hill and sends a message to Azog. He's Wheelie Boy, yeah. Okay. We end the poll there. So we have been going for near enough exactly 3 hours, 2 hours and 55 minutes, which is almost as long as an unexpected journey. Well, thank you guys for helping with the tier list, because what I'm going to do, I'll give you guys a little bit of an update on what I've been doing for those of you who have jumped in after I last told you. So, today, I finished recording the script for the Final Autopsy. I have nearly finished editing it, and the amount of content of me speaking is close to 3.5 hours. So, assuming I don't remove anything else during editing,
it's all coming together.
The video is going to be somewhere between 3.5 and 4 hours would be my guess, probably closer to 4. Because what I'm going to do with this stream is cut out bits where there were particularly good comments that I read out and put those into the video, which means that that's not bits that are scripted, and it's obviously going to make the video longer. So, yeah, final length, at a guess, it's going to be somewhere around about 4 hours is what I would probably say. So what I need to do... Oh, just quickly, super chat from Justin again. Unexpected character ranking. Well... This has been a massive success because you guys have made me change my mind on some. I'm thinking I've made you guys change your mind on some others. And the number of people that I've had in here is about 4 times how many people I usually have. So thank you everyone for joining. So yeah, I've made some upgrades to my video editing setup, which I need to, well, set up after I finish editing the audio, and then I'll import that all in and get cracking on the video. So how long it will take me to put the video together, probably not as long as any of the episodic videos that I've done for The Hobbit, because the autopsy is going to use less footage from the individual films, and there's going to be more that's, you know, I have a flowchart as a bit of a spoiler, but yeah. So yeah, how long it's going to take, I don't know. My original goal, I think, was to get it out by the end of October. I am not sure if that will happen, and if there are any copyright problems, then that will definitely not happen. So for now, we're going ballpark end of October, early November, but I'm not going to kill myself making it, and I'm also not going to rush it out so as to get it out. It'll take as long as it takes. Had another super chat here from Mega Hobbit. Thank you so much. So much love to you and all guys of the random community. Thank you. And yeah, thank you again for the super chat. So I guess the last thing that I'll say in the stream, because I do have other stuff to do, such as editing the audio, and I'm busy tomorrow, but I am not going to do any gaming now or anything. So what I will tell you guys that don't know is that we have a Discord server. If you want to join, there is a link in the description of this video. If there isn't, then you'll be able to find it in the link to any of the other videos, in the description of any of the other videos. If you want to jump in, we've got a couple of hundred people, and yeah, I'm in there every now and then. And if you want more more frequent updates, then yeah, jump in.
It's all coming together.
Super chat from Inglorious Baxter. Have I given you enough money to convince you to check out Outer Wilds? Firstly, thank you for the super chat, but yes, Outer Wilds is on my list of games to check out. I just need to decide if I am, because I think I need to try a game like that before I decide to stream it.
It's all coming together.
But I will say that I will probably try it out, yes. Thank you again for the super chat. Right, 2 more quickly, and then I need to be going. So, Arthur says, 1 more because I forgot. Damn it, we got another one. Okay, 1 more because I forgot. I asked you to review anime. You said it wasn't your style. What about live-action One Piece? Some people were discussing that in the Discord. Not me, because I haven't seen it, but if you want to jump in and discuss it, then feel free. I will probably watch the live-action One Piece. I just have not yet, and I, of course, haven't seen the original, so yeah. And Fifi Trixabel says, can you do an autopsy of Fifth Element? That's a name I've not heard in a while. I've seen Fifth Element once. It's probably due a rewatch. I'll probably rewatch it at some point. Whether I'll do an autopsy, I can't say, because I am only going to do autopsies on things I have very strong feelings on. If I don't have quite as much to say, I may still do a video, but the autopsies are, they're a particular thing that I want to sort of reserve for things where I'm going to go as in-depth as I can possibly go. And constrained something, anachronism. It's not because I didn't know what an anachronism is, to be clear. It's because the name was cut off on my screen. How is Alfred not film breaking? Reality bends around him to put him in the best place, and at least 3 good characters inexplicably put trust in him. Because his actions are not contradictory. Whereas, again, if we're going break the films, we're having to compare him to the characters that I put there in Rings of Power. That is the bar, and I think Alfred is more comparable to someone like Galadriel. Because Galadriel in Rings of Power, if you recall, the world contorts so as to allow her to seemingly be an awesome person, even though she obviously is not. But her actions are pretty consistent in that she just is a terrible person. Right. What was I going to say? I said Discord. Yes, so live streams, usually I do every other week. Sometimes I do every week. Usually it's video games. Sometimes it's the release of a video. But at some point before the release of the autopsy, I will stream at least once at this time. So Friday evening UK. And yeah, I don't know what I'll be playing next. We will have to see. So I'm going to leave it there. I'll see you guys in Discord. Or I will see you on the next live stream, or I will see you in the autopsy. Thank you so much, guys, and I hope you have enjoyed the stream.